we welcome you to another live edition of the Sports Box, your go-to sports podcast featuring great content, conversation, and your occasional disagreement. Stick around to interact and ask questions. The Sports Box is brought to you by our sponsor, Showcase Sports, located on the White Horse Pike in Hamilton, New Jersey. Showcase Sports for the elite player. Ladies and gentlemen, it's showtime.
All right, what's up, guys? After a very heated, lively debate in one of our group chats, me and Noah are now live Friday night. Another week closer to college football, so as always, a lot of college football on tonight's slate. But without further ado, I'll kick it over to my co-host, Noah Dog Dibler. How are you, man, tonight? I'm very fired up to be on here with you.
Yeah, I'm doing great, man. Like you said, literally right before the show, some massive news in the sports world dropped, and not college football related, but we were discussing that. Got into a massive debate, literally 20 minutes before the show, and before we knew it, we were late. We were actually going to try and be early, but we are not. So, yeah, I'm doing great, man. Ready to get into it, talk some college football, regular season, actual stuff, not just talking about recruiting over and over again. We're going to be talking about actual predictions. Like it says in the post, this is our, 2022 FBS regular season prediction show with myself, Noah Dog Dibler, and my co-host, Guard Charger Patrick. But I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Another long week of work and lifting weights in the books, and now it's time for sports. Got some preseason football to look forward to this weekend. My Chargers play tomorrow night at 10 o'clock kickoff. So that'll be a late night for me to stay up and watch some football. Justin Herbert, unfortunately, won't be playing, but it makes completely 110% sense there that he wouldn't be suiting up. But yeah, really excited to get on here, talk some college football. Tomorrow marks 2 weeks from week 0 and 3 weeks from week 1 of the college football season. So we are right there, guys. We're right on the cusp of things. And, you know, each day my kind of level of hype is going up and up and up. Looking forward to going to week 1, being back in the swamp there in Gainesville, watching some games live. Really excited, Noah.
Yeah, man. NFL preseason as well, like you said. My Falcons apparently just got a come-from-behind win against the Detroit Lions in their first preseason game. So, yeah, Mariota, Desmond Ridder as well. Like I was telling our good buddy Josh Lane, that's the first of 4 wins the Falcons will be getting this season. So excited about that. But like you said, 2 weeks from tomorrow, we have week 0. Stay tuned. We'll be announcing our next show much later in the show because we have a lot to discuss, like you said, Garth. But yeah, I'm still sharing real quick, so if you want to introduce the first topic, Garth, you can go ahead.
Yeah, most definitely. Real quick, guys, I do want to go ahead. We got a lot of comments coming in already. Our good buddy from Sport Life, Bradley, Bulldogs versus Ducks, cannot wait for that game. That's one that we talked a little bit last week. I actually, for some reason, thought that game was in Oregon for the longest time. It is a neutral site, but it is in the state of Georgia. So I would call that a neutral, in quotations, home game for the Georgia Bulldogs. They'll probably pack that place and be nice and loud for their defending national champions, Noah.
Yes, sir.
John Suggs, glad to have
Go
you
Ducks.
in here tonight, man. We always love having your comments on these college football shows. Go Ducks.
Mikey, it doesn't matter. We could have Jesus Christ himself as our head coach next season. We'd win 5 games. Doesn't matter, man.
And one more comment real quick before I get us going here. Mike Bradley, what's up, dorks?
What's up, man? I heard Garth has already surpassed you in Apex in like 2 nights. What's going on with that, man? Come on, bro.
I don't think Mikey even knew that I was ahead of him. But yeah, let's go ahead. Let's jump right into it here. Let's see here. I just want to make sure now before I put this up in reverse order, are we starting with Sean's story of the week? Because I got a good one if that is the case.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So our weekly segment, it's become tradition here on the Sweet Tea Show, guys. Our Sean's story of the week. It's kind of me and Noah's personal version of, I guess, the closest thing to it you guys might see on a sports broadcast is maybe like the Come On Man series that they do there on NFL Sundays. But basically we each pick a story about a person, you know, in sports and our personal lives, whatever, kind of explain why we call them the Sean story of the week. And usually they're pretty humorous. For me personally, yet again, It seems to almost never fail week in, week out. It is a work-related story. We hired a new guy. I wouldn't say he took Sean's position because he can't hold a candle to Sean, the OG 1.0, but we do refer to him as Sean 2.0. And unfortunately, he's not an upgrade. But this man, we decided to ask him some trivia questions at work. One of the ones really wasn't a trivia question. We just got on the subject of like where we were all originally from. And the other guy that works in the back with him in the warehouse, he told him he was originally from Massachusetts. And he said, "Oh yeah, cool. That's like near Colorado, right?" And he's like, "Colorado, dude. We're like one of the original 13 colonies. You know, we're up in the Northeast, New England, and we have beaches." And he was like, "Huh? They have beaches in Massachusetts? What? No, dude, you're lying." And he's like, "No, I'm telling you the truth, man." So that's the first of a few. The second one today, we decided to ask him an actual trivia question. He thought that when we asked him about Sir Isaac Newton, that he was the first man to land on the moon. And then finally, we asked him if he'd rather have $1 million cash right now or a penny doubled every single day throughout an entire year. And he said the $1 million cash in hand. So Sean 2.0 has proven to be a trivia ace. If you guys have any connections to somebody on Jeopardy, or maybe even possibly Wheel of Fortune, please let me know. We'll get him in contact. He'll be like the best ever, longest winning streak, most money earned.
Yeah, no doubt, man. He'd make Ken Jennings look like an amateur by comparison. But yeah, that's. I do miss Sean. The real Sean, like John says there. Has he wrecked a car at Nissan yet? We haven't heard anything. Apparently, the dealership is still standing, so he hasn't burned it down or anything like that yet. I don't know if he got.
It is still standing. No wrecked cars as far as I know. He does still work there as well as far as I know. Hasn't been fired. Hasn't quit. I do know, though, that recently they showed up to deliver us some parts. Not to me, but to the guy in the back, the same one who's originally from Massachusetts. Their Nissan driver walked into the back, and the guy in the warehouse, because he's heard all the stories about Sean, the OG Dawkins, he said, "Hey, man, you know Sean, right? Like you work with him next door?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I know Sean." And the guy, they were in the back. Noah, you know this picture of the overhead door. Logan just points up. There it is, right on cue. He points up at that, and the guy looks up at it like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "That was Sean." And the guy was like, "That was Sean?" And he's like, "Yes, dude, that was Sean." And then he proceeded to tell him why he got fired for performing a hit and run in the company vehicle. So I'm sure Sean got to hear some stories about himself at work. Yep, there he is right there. The man, the myth, and the legend.
Sean is a legend, man. I remember it was like a week ago. I don't remember what game you were playing, but you're like, "Yeah, Sean was going to play with me, but he fell asleep or ditched me or something. He never got on. He ghosted me."
Yeah, this man texts me and says, "Hey, man, I'm on now. We can play." So I said, "Okay, cool. I'm eating. I'll be on in like 10 or 15 minutes." Finished eating, got on. This man was nowhere to be found.
Just like when he hit that guy's car. He was nowhere to be found.
Nowhere to be found.
Need to go ask the new employee to get some stripe paint or a left-hand fan. Well, hey, if he's not asleep, because that's what he loves to do. Garth has sent me pictures, like 3 or 4 pictures of this guy just taking a nap in the break room. He's got his hoodie pulled over his head, like people can't see him. Garth ghosts me every night.
Like he's referring to playing Apex.
It is tough when Garth has to carry the team every time he plays. You know that meme where it's like an anime team or something like that, and it's like so-and-so at 90%, 99% power, and so-and-so at 100% power. The left pitcher is you and Mike at 100%, and then 99% is just you. I know. It's rough out in these streets, Andrew, especially for you right now as a Padres fan. But we do actually have college football to discuss on this show. It's already 9:27. We haven't even started, so probably should get into it. we're going to go ahead and put up the coaches poll. I've missed this, Garth, talking college football, the poll going across the bottom, all that stuff. Just, nice to be back discussing, actual, regular season college football games since we've been off since January, pretty much doing that. So, Alabama number one, 54 first place votes. It's not a surprise they had the number one recruiting class, stuff like that. They're just in the national championship game last year. They compete pretty much every single season unless they have just an absolute down year and they somehow miss the playoffs. Phenomenal team, cream of the crop basically, so that makes sense. Then you have teams like Ohio State. They have 5 first place votes, number 2 in the poll. Really excited to see what they do this year with C.J. Stroud, Jackson, Smith, and Jigba, and even Marvin Harrison Jr. Should step up this year as well. They have a dynamic offense there. Other teams, Georgia, the defending national champions, coming in at number 3 with 6 first place votes. Then Clemson, Notre Dame, Michigan, who were in the college football playoff last year and got boat raced by UGA. Texas A&M with that massive number 1 recruiting class, coming in just ahead of Alabama last I checked, so we'll see what they do this year. Utah, who won the Pac-12 last year. Oklahoma, now with Brent Venables as head coach, coming over as DC from Clemson. And then Baylor, rounding out the top 10, who did win the Big 12 last year. So some interesting teams in here, Garth. I will say I was a bit surprised. I think Cincinnati's only like number 22 or something. I thought that was a bit shocking. I'm surprised USC wasn't a bit higher just because, I thought the voters, Lincoln Riley there, whatnot, they love that guy so much. Surprised he didn't get a bit higher than number 15 as well. Miami at number 17. We'll see what they do this year. I mean, God, Guard, with the NIL deals they've had, the recruiting they've done, spending millions of dollars, they need to have a really good season. Other teams that are interesting, we have a couple SEC teams towards the bottom like Kentucky, Arkansas, and Ole Miss. Houston number 25 as well. So, obviously, Guard, preseason polls don't mean too much. And I will put up, just some other teams that are expected to receive votes. Were there any major things you noticed when this preseason poll came out?
Yeah, so real quick, I just want to say, Mikey, for some reason, nothing pops up on our end. We don't really, as far as I know, have experience with anybody sending stars. So maybe that's something we'll have to look into for the future. Maybe get something that, an effect kind of like streamers use that pop up with your name and what you sent. But we'll definitely talk it out with our good buddy Brian Attard on that and try and figure that out for future shows. But thank you, dude.
Thank you, Mikey.
Appreciate it.
Real quick, Garth, I just want to say, for those who don't know, we read the comments on StreamYard, not Facebook. On Facebook, I think you can see the stars. On StreamYard, we can't. So that's why we didn't say it.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mikey.
But yeah, one thing that surprised me up at the front in the top 4 is Georgia being 3. I get Bama at 1. I mean, Bama's Bama. Nick Saban's still there. Everybody's high on them, even when they just lost in the national championship game. I get it. It's understandable. Ohio State was a good team, no doubt, but Georgia's the defending national champions. Yeah, they lost a few key guys on offense, but their quarterback's back. We know how well Kirby Smart has recruited since he's been there, so they're still loaded with talent. They've still got a lot of really good players on that team, and they are the defending national champions. So to have them behind Ohio State, it kind of made me scratch my head a little bit. The other one was Clemson. I don't know why they're so high. I get it. Dabo is a great coach. He's been phenomenal at Clemson. But with the year they had last year, granted, their defense was really, really strong, and most people that kind of flew under the radar for them, but they lose their DC. We're going to see how greatly that impacts them. Obviously, it's not solely on him, but it's a huge part of how they operate. And secondly, they're going to need much better quarterback play to be a top 4 team, in my opinion. Luckily for them, the ACC still is not that competitive, in my opinion. Wake Forest, I'm not surprised by their ranking, but I will say the losing of Sam Hartman to a non-football health condition is going to be huge for them. Prayers up to that guy. I didn't see the details as to what exactly it is. But that's a really tough break. I can't even imagine, what that'd be like to have your dreams taken away from you by something completely out of your control. So, I wish nothing but the best for him. But yeah, other than that, Noah, there really wasn't like a huge, I think like just completely bad placement by any of these teams. I like USC being up there. They have a fantastic offensive line, obviously good quarterback play, and a ton of skilled position players. So, you know, that makes sense. But yeah, overall pretty solid list. Um, it'll just be interesting to see how things shape up with those top 5 or 6 teams as the season goes on, especially Clemson. I'm really interested to see what they're going to be this year.
Yeah, the cat is fired up, man. It's not feeding time yet, though. He usually eats around 11. John saying,
we got to go
what's
back
up,
to one comment unless you put it up and I just missed it completely. Suggs, Utah versus Florida is going to be a super tough game. Yeah, man. No doubt for both teams, though, not just Florida, because, we saw it last year. Alabama came in there. They were like 20-point favorites. They just barely sneaked out of there by the skin of their teeth. Bad special teams play by Florida lets them off the hook. So, yeah, like I said, obviously a very tough game for Florida. I don't expect us just to walk in there and win the thing. I would not be shocked if we lost, but on the other side of things, Utah is not guaranteed to just walk in there and win either, because it's one of the toughest places to play in college football. And I think it's going to be a little bit extra rowdy because, all the people down here in Florida are really hyped up for Napier, and, they want to be optimistic and hopeful with the changing of the guards. So it should be a pretty good game in there, Noah, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think it'll be one of the best games of the opening weekend. Or not the opening, technically week 0, but, basically the first week where most teams are playing. I think it's one of the highlight matchups. Utah, I believe, is returning, I want to say, either all 11 of their starters on defense or 10 of the 11, something like that. They're returning
10,
a lot of starters on their team.
10, because they remember they lost, what's that guy's name? Devin Lloyd, is it? My memory serves me correctly?
Yeah, that's
Fantastic
right.
middle linebacker.
Absolutely. So,
Also, Cameron Rising, though, one of the quarterbacks who's kind of under the radar right now heading into the season.
Agree. I like them a lot. And they did win the Pac-12 last year. They destroyed Oregon. Sorry to remind John of that, but they did. And I think, like you said, Florida, they've done great recruiting. They're at home, like you mentioned. And, new head coach Bouts, man. Sometimes a new guy comes in and, he motivates the team to a new level. So we'll see what happens. We'll
also, Noah, real
later.
quick, one last thing on that coaches poll I meant to mention. I like Baylor being at 10. They're kind of my dark horse team this year, that if they play to the level they're capable of and win some of those toss-up games, could make a case to be in there at like the 4 spot for college football playoffs. But, I'll hold judgment on that for now. Just I like to see them up there as well.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And, I do agree with what you said as well. I think, teams like Ohio State and Clemson, which, I get Ohio State, their offense is loaded, but I think they're always very highly ranked when these things come out. And, I do. Oh, go ahead.
I almost forgot. There was one other question mark outside of the top 10, and that is the University of Miami. No shade to Tyler Van Dyke. Absolutely fantastic quarterback. I am just keep wondering every single season we get to preseason. We're almost there. Miami is hyped up like, oh, this is the year. The U is back. They're winning the ACC. And then they go up against a team like Clemson or Alabama and get absolutely killed. And the rest of the season is downhill from there. So, it'll be interesting to see if they stay up, even possibly move up the ranks, or if they have another similar season to what they've had recently. And Josh McMurray loves this fact. Mario Cristobal, fantastic recruiter, Miami native, all-time head coach record is
62-60.
Yes, sir. Just barely above 500. So we'll see how that comes into play there in Miami.
Yeah, I do know. JD Corsi, who's a guy that I know a little bit, is a big Miami fan. And whenever Josh Smith brings up 62-60, he gets JD fired up.
Now, here is one of the best takes from our viewers that we have had. I got 100 on NC State winning the ACC. For a lot of you guys, you might be scratching your head. What is John talking about? I'll tell you what John's talking about. This is a team that was absolutely fantastic. They were great at the end of the season. They were looking forward to a big win in a bowl game. It got taken away from them. They return their quarterback who has broken all of Phillip Rivers' college records there at NC State. This really good offensive line. They lost one guy to the draft, obviously, but still very strong offensive line. They just play really, really good team football, and they've got a stud at quarterback. Definitely a team to watch there in the ACC.
Yeah, no, like you said, Akim Nkwonu was actually the highest drafted ACC player last year. Went number 6 to the Carolina Panthers. Would have loved him on the Falcons, but of course that did not happen. But like you said, I still think they have a very strong team. And with Devin Leary coming back, I mean, I think they're going to be right near the top again. Ton of comments. Oh, my God. Jacob Winters saying OSU equals natty. Hashtag buck up. Mikey saying, I've seen people worried about UGA and the lack of O-line recruits going into this year's team and next year's class. Is that a thing? They did lose Justin Schaefer and Jamari Sawyer to the draft. Funnily enough, both those guys went to mine and Garf's teams. They still have Warren McClendon. He's their main returning offensive lineman. He's a first-team All-SEC guy. But, there's definitely a lack of experience on the line. Now, Garth, I do remember that being brought up about Alabama last year.
I'm glad you said that because I was going to say the exact same thing.
And it worked out, pretty well for them until they did play UJ the second time. And then you could kind of see it. But it's definitely, noticeable, I'd say, that, we got a lot of younger guys down the line. But I wouldn't be too concerned overall. I think, once again, with the talent UJ has and the recruiting classes they get, on their day, I think they can beat just about anybody. I mean, they showed that last year when they won the national championship against, the greatest dynasty the sport has ever seen in Alabama. So, but yeah, lots of comments about the cat. The cat is fine now. I don't know what happened to him, but he's okay. Josh Lane saying, I'm higher than Josh McMurray eating a PB&J right now. Yeah, he was great guess, but man, he was on something for sure. How dare he? Mikey Bradley saying Michael Harris Jr. with the go-ahead homer. I saw we were playing the Marlins. Nice to hear that we're leading now. Vaughn Grisham as well made his debut the other night. Hit a home run in his first ever hit over the Green Monster at Fenway Park in Boston. So that was nice to see. But next, Garth, we're going to get a quick recruiting recap. I say quick because we've literally discussed these rankings I want to say at least 12 times by now. It's insane. We should have them memorized, honestly, at this point. But just to, I think a recap every now and then is important since we are going to be discussing, how good we think every team will be this year, and recruiting is obviously very important in doing that. So it would help if I actually added it to stream. There we go. Like I said earlier, A&M was number 1. They did get 30 total commits in, ahead of Alabama and Georgia. Ohio State number 4, Texas number 5. That was another one. Guard.
They actually just landed the number 1 running back in the class of 2023 last night.
Yeah, and they did see when I was going over these polls, Guard, I saw that Texas actually got a first place vote. 4 teams got a first place vote. The other 3 were the top 3, and then some guy, I don't know who it is, some brave soul, or maybe it's just a Texas fan. Who knows?
I wish they would announce these people's names.
Yeah, that'd be funny.
Because it seems like in every sport, whether it be a preseason poll or actual something like an MVP vote, there's always that one guy who just makes that blatant left field pick that makes no sense.
Yeah, it's like honestly, Garth, it's like the MLB Hall of Fame voting. How did someone vote against guys like Hank Aaron making the Hall of Fame? That just makes no sense, man. What are you doing? Are you just trying to be different? You trying to be generous against worse players that might not get in if you don't vote for them? Come on, man. But anyway, Penn State coming in at number 6. Had a solid first half of the season last year, Garth, and then they just completely fell off. Sean Clifford got hurt as well, so we'll see what happens with them at quarterback this year, if they do any good or not. Tom Scavetta's Notre Dame Fighting Irish coming in at number 7. First full year under Marcus Freeman after good old Brian Kelly went to LSU. Oklahoma at number 8. This is why I said, when it happened, Garth, I love the Venables signing at head coach. He's a great defensive mind. He was basically the reason Clemson somehow won 10 games last year, which, I do agree with you on that as well. I think Clemson at number 4 is ridiculously high. When you think about the fact they were number 3 coming in the last year, Garth, they just had one of their worst seasons in years. Biggest disappointment probably with college football, and they're still number 4 now. I do think they will rebound. I'm not saying, they're going to be crap again this year, but they are showing a lot of faith in that team after how bad they were last year. So we'll see what they do this year. Michigan at number 9, and then Clemson, funny enough, running at number 10. North Carolina, and then LSU, Oregon. You get the idea. We don't need to go over it in depth because, like I said, we've done this so many times. But we have an idea of who the best recruiting teams in the nation are. A lot of SEC teams. Jimbo coming out with that number 1 class. Other teams like Ohio State, Michigan, still getting it done. Penn State, throwing in Notre Dame as well. So some interesting names to discuss. Would you like to see the Pac-12 pick up Boise State or even San Diego State or SMU? I'd love that, John. Those teams are very good. Very good Group 5 teams. I'd love to see them in a bigger conference. And, with teams like UCLA and USC leaving, that would be nice to see. But we are about to get into a realignment talk, so we can discuss maybe in a bit more detail in a minute. Billy Blue Chip moving on up. Definitely San Diego State. I believe Andrew is a Aztecs fan. I mean, he's a Chargers fan, Padres fan, and all that, so that would not surprise me at all. Mikey's saying yes and no, the Big 12 should go after SMU. He's saying about San Diego State, it just makes too much sense. Hall was suspended indefinitely at Texas. I believe that is.
Yeah, it is. So. God dang it, Mikey. UT is Tennessee. But he was suspended at Texas. He transferred from Alabama.
Okay. Good job, Mikey. Throwing me off, man, as saying UT like that. I think Dante Moore, even Lama Leva, will jump Manning for number 1 quarterback. Let's not forget as well, I think there's something a lot of people forget when they mention Texas with Arch Manning. They do have Quinn Ewers, who was a number 1 overall prospect. Like, not just like he was the best quarterback in the class. He was the number 1 overall prospect, and he's only one of 3 quarterbacks ever to have a perfect rating of a 1.0000, whatever it is. So, I think Arch may win the job, but I think people that think, he's just going to roll over, he's going to transfer, whatever, and just give up his job easily. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it's going to be a tough fight for him. Malachi Nelson, USC commit, although I can't remember. I think did he flip? I feel like there was something that came out a few weeks ago about Nelson. I'm going to look it up real quick, actually, because I don't remember. But I think I heard something about A&M or something trying to go after him. Yeah, Malachi Nelson just take significant steps in leaving USC football for Texas A&M? That would be big because that's a guy I know you mentioned, Garth, saying you thought he was probably actually even better than Arch Manning.
Yeah, Lama Leva is really good as well. That's if I had to take a stab at who's the most realistic QB in the class who could pass Arch by the end of their senior seasons, it would be him. The dude's just unreal physically gifted. Big, tall kid, lengthy, big hands, throws the ball really well, really quick release. Just really fun to watch throw the football. But, yeah, I don't know, Noah. It's the fact that the Manning name carries so much weight. Whether he's deserving of it or not, the family has done so much that the name is just going to have the effect it's going to have.
Malachi Wilson. I'm so sorry, Mike. I'm terrible. I love butchering names a lot, which is kind of ironic because my name has been butchered, basically all my life. So you'd think I'd be better at it. But, no, I definitely agree. I think Texas has talented quarterback in Ewers, and there were talented quarterbacks in Manning's own class, I think. And this is another thing, Garth. I don't want to get into too much detail because we have a lot to talk about. But when you look at the NIL deals for, the top quarterback prospects for 2023 or whatever, and Arch Manning made like $3.4 million, and then Nelson only made like $700K. Like, come on. There's only one reason for that, and it has nothing to do with their talent. Now, I'm not hating on Arch Manning. He very well could become the best quarterback from the class. Literally, no one knows that because none of them have played in college. But, it does make you question when you see things like that, if it is all his talent or if a lot of it is his name. And I do understand.
So one thing, touching on the NIL real quick, Noah, I actually meant to mention it a little while back when we were on Miami. Their biggest booster, actually, the guy who's kind of been throwing money at these recruits, literally just came out like yesterday and said that he's going to stop throwing all this money at recruits because the more he invests, the less potential for return on investment. So he literally went into the media and said, I view these guys as like an investment that's going to bring me more money. And 2, he said that if he just throws the money around to all these players, then every single player coming to Miami is going to expect it, and the money's going to dry up.
Mikey's saying Zach Wilson towards ACL. I did not hear about that, but if he did, that sucks. I was just talking with our buddy Shaden about the Jets a few nights ago, actually, when we were gaming on PS5, and, he said, I hope Zach Wilson has a promising year this year. So if that is true, it's very unfortunate.
Jalen Hurts also got rocked tonight.
Yeah, I did see that. He got absolutely obliterated. John, this is a good point by John here as well. Remember, Nelson has already flipped from OU to USC after Riley made the trip westward. He clearly wants to play for Riley very badly. While A&M isn't an NIL giant, Nelson has followed Riley in much of his commitments. Very good point by John there. I honestly, that slipped my mind until you mentioned it. That is true. He was at Oklahoma. Riley, decides to leave because, God forbid he goes to SEC. He might actually have to play some decent teams. And then, he goes to USC. Nelson follows him, along with about half of Oklahoma's staff as well, Garth. I think that's important to mention as well, since we mentioned how important the other position of coaches can be to recruiting. I mean, a ton of Oklahoma guys going over there, so it makes sense he did flip. So I don't know if he will flip to A&M. If he did, that'd be massive for them because they're already starting to get number one classes with NIL. If they get a quarterback as talented as that, that would really help them as well. Now, we're going to get into conference league realignments. We're just going to really quickly summarize what has happened for this year because there's not a lot. James Madison has moved from the CAA, which is in the FCS, to the Sun Belt. And Marshall, Old Dominion, and Southern Miss, who were in the Conference USA, have also moved to the Sun Belt. Sun Belt is now up to 14 teams, So, interesting there. However, Garth, what I think is even more interesting to talk about, and I think this is going to lead to a massive discussion, is what is planned for next year. And I got this nice picture right here, thanks to Wikipedia. These are moves in conferences that are planned to take place in 2023. So not this year, but next year. But you see teams like BYU and Cincinnati going to the Big 12, Houston as well. A couple of American teams, we already discussed them, big move to the Big 12 a few 6 or 7 months back, I want to say, when that was announced now. Other teams, Conference USA is losing a ton of teams as well. Teams like Charlotte and Florida Atlantic going to the Atlantic as well as North Texas, Rice, UAB, and UTSA all going to the American. So we'll see how that shakes out as well. UCF going to the Big 12 as well. So some interesting moves, a lot of shakeups. Obviously, this isn't counting, future moves like USC and UCLA going to the Big 12 or Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC. But, Garth, it seems like the year, right, we're getting massive shakeups in college football. A division's completely realigning 4 or 5 teams, leaving the Conference USA now to head on over to the American. The Conference USA getting teams from, teams like Liberty, I think, was one of the ones that were getting replaced. A couple FCS teams as well. I think they had a former WAC team as well. If you remember the WAC, Garth, I think they got one of those teams as well to join. Teams moving all over the place, big moves everywhere. So it got me thinking. And, I think this is the big question. We had some comments earlier that kind of talking about it. With all these conferences realigning by the year, what do you think is next? Because, I have some interesting ideas. I want to hear your thoughts on this. But, what do you think, some big moves that you could see happening that haven't been announced just yet?
Yeah, so real quick, guys, I do want to mention one thing. Because I remember not too long ago there was a lot of talks about like FSU and a couple other teams wanting to join the SEC. The SEC commissioner came out and said, absolutely not. We are not adding more teams to the conference. Texas and Oklahoma are it. We have no intentions of getting any bigger than that. So it'll be interesting to see if they really do hold true to that. And then really just, with the moves that these conferences are making, they're going towards, not really having the majority of the conference be in the same region of the U.S. You're starting to get teams kind of from all over the place. It'll be really interesting to see how they handle the alignment of the teams within each division. Are they going to kind of stay with that SEC tradition of East-West? Are they going to do the ever so popular pod idea where it's like a group of 4 or 5 teams who are all nearby who are going to play, each other once a year, every year, and then they'll play like 1 or 2 teams out of the other pods. Really, as far as is there any big, huge, announcements that I could see happening? Not really, other than you might see a team. I could see somebody joining the ACC for sure. because I feel like that's a historically great conference that's really lacking and on the downslope right now. They've been Clemson heavy for years. So, I feel like they would be looking to add a team, especially a quality team that they think they could come in and compete. Um, the $1 million question is, will Notre Dame ever join a conference? I don't think I'll see it in my lifetime, but who knows? But yeah, no, not really. No, any huge blockbuster things that I could see happening. Just really interested to see how will they handle, the alignment of the teams within each division. How is the schedule going to shake up? And what's going to happen to some of these conferences that are losing a lot of teams? Are they going to find somebody to fill the spot, or are they just going to dissolve altogether?
It's tough. I mean, we mentioned this when we talked about, USC and UCLA leaving the Pac-12 to go to the Big Ten. The Pac-12 was already like the lowest earning Power 5 conference, and it wasn't even close. And then you lose two of your biggest moneymakers. Okay, people might laugh at UCLA on the field, but they're still Los Angeles College. Like, they make a ton of money for that conference, and USC needs no explanation. You lose both of them. And with that as well, Garth, and we mentioned this when we talked about it last time when it first broke, that shows they don't give a crap about geographic location. They just care about money. I mean, you got two teams from friggin' Los Angeles playing in a very central, northeast/central conference, where teams from states like Michigan or Ohio are playing now. So, it's all about revenue now. A lot of comments, a lot of great comments as well. I want to address some of these. Wasn't Coastal Carolina and Liberty thinking of joining the ACC? I know Eastern Carolina has been in the talks, but they want the SEC to ask them because of the money. Andrew saying the Big Ten. Did I say the Big 12? I don't know if I did. If I did, I meant the Big Ten. Seems a lot of FCS teams are being bumped up to FBS. I like it. Yeah, a couple going to Conference USA, and like I said earlier, James Madison going to the Sun Belt. Good buddy Tom Scavetta joining in. How you doing, my friend?
What's up, Tom?
Let's go Giants. Big W last night. The Falcons just got one as well. Also have to look at the TV contracts. Didn't CBS drop SEC and add the Big Ten? CBS is getting the Big Ten, and in 2024, I believe it is, Garth, the SEC is going to ESPN.
I got to correct this real quick.
Okay.
Not that it's the end-all, be-all, but I just have to point out that the CBS did not drop SEC. SEC dropped CBS because they were sick of how they were working the schedule. Me and Noah have talked about it a lot on this Sweet Tea show. The SEC CBS is really weird in that they choose to make the marquee SEC matchup every week a noon kickoff game. Not only is that not good for viewership, most people want to tune in for a primetime game at night or at least later on in the afternoon. Two, as somebody who goes to a lot of SEC football games, it absolutely sucks from a tailgating standpoint because you wake up at the crack ass of dawn, get there, set up all your stuff, you tailgate for a couple hours, and then all of a sudden you're in the game. And it's like 100 degrees unless it's late in the season. You're just roasting in the sun. That's besides the point. But yeah, no, the SEC dropped CBS, went to ESPN because the times that they could do, having these marquee nighttime games that you've seen the Big Ten have so many of, they're going to be able to have that now. And the other thing too is they won't be just broadcast on ESPN. They will also be on ABC. Huge win for the SEC, in my opinion. Just goes to show why they're the best conference in college football, Noah.
I agree completely. It's a big upgrade. I mean, just think about it logically for a second. What are you making more money from? CBS or ESPN, ABC, both owned by Disney? I mean, I think it's big for the SEC. The only thing I would say is, Garth, I guess from a cinema standpoint, I did always grow up with the SEC on CBS, so it will be a little bit weird, but you'll get used to it after a while. And, me personally, Garth, my two favorite conferences to watch college football, the SEC and Big Ten. And you know what? I still can do that very easily, except it might even be easier now that, the SEC is moving up to ESPN, which, God, biggest sports platform in the entire world, basically. So, but yeah, I mean, it was a bit rough. Like, you have such great matchups, Garth, but they play at like freaking 12 noon or 3:30. And then there's these night games, the 8 o'clock night games on ABC or ESPN or whatever. And, there's some good matchups every now and then. I'm not saying they're not. I mean, Clemson UGA was on ABC. They have some good matchups. But, some of these big-time, SEC games, I want to see them, later in the day when there's not 20 freaking million games going on at the same time, right? So I do think it's, a big win for the SEC. So we'll see what happens there. Mikey's saying, as a Bills fan, Antonio Williams is a stud. If God forbid Barkley gets banged up, I think you will be a big fan of AW. SEC to ESPN and big sign with Fox, I believe, and is CBS, I believe. Hey guys, did you know that Cal Hubbard is the only person in both the Football and Baseball Hall of Fame? I did not know that. But thank you for the fun fact, David.
Thank you for that one, Dave. I didn't either, and I love those random facts.
Yeah, we always love random facts, especially historical ones, because me and Garth are big into that type of stuff. Okay. See, we cannot read some of these out loud because we might get canceled, but that was pretty funny, David. Lies, he says, complete blasphemy. Can't wait for USC and UCLA having to play Wisconsin in the snow. Yeah, that's a point as well. These friggin' God, in Los Angeles where it's like perfect weather all the time or it's scorching hot, whatever it is. And they go into play in Wisconsin where it's like negative 80 degrees and there's 12 inches of snow. That's a good point as well. I think some people might not think of that, but completely different playing conditions as well, which, like, I think if you're talented enough, you can play anywhere. But when you're playing, players that have grown up there or whatever, they played in the area and they're used to that kind of stuff, and you're not, I mean, it'd be hard to say that doesn't play a factor in a football game. Absolutely. Exactly, Mikey. A game like Bama and Florida was 3:30, but we woke up at 4:30 a.m. And so that was the best game of the day.
This was funny. This is funny what Mikey's talking about here. So that was the game that we all went to last year, Noah, as you know. I told these guys the night before, I was like, guys, we got to get up early and get there to secure a good tailgating spot. And, thankfully they listened to me, but they were like, this dude's probably crazy. Like, why the hell does he want to wake up so early when we don't have to be there that early in the day to make the game? So we did. We got up early. We got over there. We stopped. We got food and drinks, whatever, made it there, set up our tailgate spot, chilled for, probably about an hour or so, I'd say. And then all of a sudden the place was like a zoo. Cars everywhere, people up and down the sidewalks, honking, blaring the horns, fighting to find a spot to park their car. And I kid you not, all these guys were like, Garth, dude, you were right. I'm glad we got here so early. We're just sitting here having the time of our lives while all these other people are going nuts trying just to find a spot to park. And I was like, yep, I told you guys. I've been here like 80 million times. I know what I'm talking about.
John saying Nebraska versus Northwestern going to be a game everyone needs to watch. Northwestern could be a sleeper in the making.
That's
one of the week zero
right there.
Yeah, one of the week 0 games, I believe. And funny enough, Garth, I actually looked this up earlier. That game is in Dublin, Ireland. It is not even in the U.S., so that's going to be an interesting game to watch as well. And yeah, like you said, Garth, Mikey, big Notre Dame fan, or no, Notre Dame, Northwestern. He has a big soft spot for them as one of his, other teams besides Florida. But yeah, I did just look it up, Garth. The Big Ten is working toward an agreement on a media rights deal with Fox Sports, CBS, and NBC. So I'm interested to see how that works out. But, it says they were with ESPN for 40 years, so that's gone. And now they got the SEC. So, we'll see how that all plays out as well. Garth is going to love this one. Tiger Woods made his first hole-in-one at the age of 8 years old. When I was 8, I was looking for roly-polies in the yard. All right. Where were we, man? Because we just had like 28 comments coming in. All right, next. Oh, real quick. I do just want to say, I agree. I don't think, at least right now, maybe a year or two from now to be different. I think the major moves have already happened. However, I will say this. I think the SEC missed a golden opportunity because, Garth, there is a team in the southeastern part of the country that is consistently competing for the playoffs, has won national titles, and it's not in the SEC. And I think you could think who it is. Clemson. They should have gotten Clemson to join the SEC. I would have taken them over Texas or Oklahoma. Add a team like Clemson to the SEC, that would have been big for them.
That would have been cool. That would have been insane. Like I said, though, the ACC is my conference that needs to add firepower to stay alive right now. Not really physically stay alive, like keep the conference going, but, be one of those forefront premier conferences in college football and be competing for college football playoff spots as well as potential titles.
Mike is saying Clemson will join the SEC. Well, I'd love that, but then it means our commissioner is just straight up, what's his name, Sankey, I think. It means Sankey's straight up lying.
Yep.
Which I would love Clemson to join. I mean, the two teams I often hear mentioned nowadays, Garth, are Clemson and, funnily enough, the other team, Florida State. Those are the two teams that constantly get mentioned as joining the SEC, which, I get Clemson. Florida State, I mean, I know they're on down times, but if they did rebound, they do still make a lot of money. So I can understand it a bit, but that is kind of like the one you just throw in there like, oh, yeah, we'll take Clemson, but you got to take Florida State. And it's like, well, we really want Clemson, so, I guess we'll deal with it. If Florida State can compete with Missouri for most of the season for fourth place or something. 2025 will be the year you see the ACC make major moves that will make the SEC make new changes, such as Miami, Clemson, Georgia Tech.
Noah loves Georgia Tech, guys. Just a random fact of the night.
Yeah, I absolutely love those guys. I was doing, getting the records for everybody. They finished 6th in their division last year in ACC, man. And these guys think that we lose one game and they can shit talk us. Your team is a joke, man. Think you add Oklahoma and Texas and bring that rivalry over to the SEC as well. Oh my, I have no problem with Oklahoma and Texas joining. I like those teams, and I think they'll make a lot of money for the SEC. I'm just saying, Clemson, man, get them in the conference as well. That's a big money maker, and they're damn good. I know they were bad last year, but they're in the perfect part of the country. Obviously, now we know that doesn't mean anything, but it does to me at least. It works great for schedules and whatnot, and they're a great team. They're going to make a lot of money. They're going to win games as well. I'm still waiting on inspecting the Pac-12 to add at least a couple of teams. South Carolina will leave the SEC and come back to the ACC. All right, Garth, ton of realignment talk. I was really looking forward to that topic because I thought it would definitely generate the most interest. But we do have other things to discuss. I do really quickly want to go over rule changes as well. Now, this might not be very easy to read, so I'll just read it out. I did highlight key points I wanted to mention in each topic, but, just some rule changes that are taking place in 2022. I'll start with the first one. In games featuring instant replay, when players are disqualified for targeting call in the second half or overtime, there can be an appeal process that will allow for the national coordinator of officials to review tapes of the targeting penalty for consideration of not requiring the player to sit out the first half of the following game. I love this, Garth, completely. I think there's been a couple cases where, the targeting call, it's a bit iffy. You don't know, first of all, you don't know if there's any intent at all, which I think is important when you're talking about targeting. And then you eject a guy for the first half of a game. It might be a key game he's playing. It might not have even been the right call. So, there are calls that are slam dunk targeting penalties, and I get that he needs to spin the guy. But I think in cases where either A, it's a bit ticky-tacky, 50-50, you can see it go either way, or a guy just straight up misses a call. And it happens, right? Officials are humans. I think you need to remember that. People make mistakes. But I think it's nice to at least have, a backup to where you can review it and say, okay, we got this one wrong. You're not suspended. I love that. I don't know about you, Garth, but I think it's very common sense. They should have done it years ago, to me.
Yeah, I love it as well, Noah, for all the same reasons that you said. I love the fact that, in certain instances like this where you're not directly changing the outcome of a game, like if you eject a guy and then you decide, hey, there's no reason that this guy should be suspended for the first half of the next game. You're not, that one player ultimately is not going to change the outcome of that game. But definitely you need to be making the right calls. So just the fact that they can go back and address things and say, you know what, hey, maybe we got this one wrong. I love that. Like you said, Noah, refs are human. They're going to make mistakes. And just the fact that the NCC is showing like, hey, we actually care about our officiating, when a lot of leagues will have refs just make absolutely atrocious calls and not even have the stomach to come out and at least say, sorry, NFL fans, we got this one wrong. We're going to do our best not to do that again. They just let it happen over and over and over with no repercussions. So pat on the back for the NCAA. They got it right here.
Yeah, they did. They did what leagues like the NFL or MLB have no balls enough to do. They made it to where you can actually overturn a decision that might not be right after the fact. So I love that as well. John did leave a comment listing some of the other rules, so we'll go through all of them real quickly. Injury timeouts awarded due to deceptive actions are also able to be reviewed. So basically, you can't fake an injury to get a timeout. And if you did do it, and they find out you did do it, or they at least think you did do it, they can determine sanctions to go against a team that uses that tactic. Pretty self-explanatory. Again, Garth, I mean, you don't want someone abusing something like that, so I think that's pretty good as well. Blocking below the waist will only be permitted inside the tackle box by linemen and stationary backs. Do not do it outside the tackle box. You will get penalized. Pretty standard as well. The penalty for players who commit illegal blocks or contact after a player fair catches is changed from 15 to 10 yards. Is no longer considered a personal foul. Now, this is a big one, Garth. This is one of the ones I looked at that was like, this is basically, I think they changed it to be more like the NFL rule. Defensive holding will remain a 10-yard penalty, but now always carries an automatic first down. Previously, automatic first downs of defensive holding were awarded if the quarterback attempted the pass. So that's kind of like, illegal contact or defensive holding in NFL. It doesn't matter if it's 5 yards or whatever. Always get an automatic first down. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I never personally like the illegal contact. I think it's dumb that you can have a little ticky-tacky call, and it's only 5 yards, but it doesn't matter if it's a 4th and 40 or whatever. It's a first down. Not a big fan of that. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but when I saw that one, I was like, well, they're going the NFL direction. I've never really liked how the NFL's done that.
I don't like the fact that they're doing away with needing the quarterback to throw the football in that direction. Because here's the thing. What if the player's completely out of the play? The quarterback's not even looking that way, and you reward them with a first down. That's really my only complaint with that, because ultimately, if it's not blatant and it's just a little bit of a hold and ultimately it doesn't affect the play, and then all of a sudden you're getting a first down of it, I'm not a huge fan of that. Just to backtrack real quick, Noah, I do like the fake injuries thing, because unfortunately that's been a huge part of college football where teams are driving and then all of a sudden you see these dudes on defense dropping like flies trying to get timeouts is what it is. You get an injury timeout and you get to catch your breath, make substitutions. That's the other thing. We see how impactful it can be in hockey when you can't get guys off of the ice. In football, it's not the same. You can substitute those guys in and out on, in those kind of situations. So I like that rule a lot. But
John, I just want to give you a round of applause, man, because this is one of the things I've hated the most the NFL has done. When a running back lowers his head right before contact and the defensive player gets called for targeting, I hate it. There was a rule put in the NFL, Garth, that you could no longer lower your head as a running back and hit a defender with the crown of your helmet. Literally, no one calls it. Running backs still do it. And the thing is, the NFL, right, will say it's all about safety. Oh, we want to protect our players. But then everything goes against the defenders. And then the actual rule they made to try and protect defenders, they don't even enforce it. It's a joke. You can't tackle high. They now don't want you to tackle low because players, they realize, okay, we can't hit him in the head, we'll hit him in the legs. People are tearing ACLs and stuff. Now they don't want you to do that. There was discussion about it last year when I think it happened to Chris Godwin. So, I mean, basically, the NFL wants these little 5'10", 150-pound cornerbacks to try and tackle, a tight end like freaking Travis Kelce in the middle of his chest with his little toothpick arms and things that I think is a joke, man. And if college starts going that direction, I will not like that. I mean, I've always liked even the pass interference, Look, I know this is extreme, Scarth, but to me, I'd rather take, a guy intentionally taking a guy out and avoid a touchdown and get 15 yards than some bullshit ticky-tack pass interference that is a 70-yard penalty. I mean, I know those are extremes, but I'd rather be too conservative than way too, what would you call, harsh, I guess. They're reviewable now, right? Everything. I think just about everything should be reviewable, Garth. I mean, I like where they're going with, reviewing some stuff and, changing stuff after the fact. So we'll see how it's enforced. But some more rule changes as well that we'll go over real quick. Codifying the change made after the 22-1 ACC championship, ball carriers who simulate a feet-first slide will be declared down to that spot. This rule has informally been referred to as the Kenny Picket rule. I remember discussing this when it happened, Garth. Spot on here as well. You can't do that because, like I mentioned before, it's just not fair to defenders. You don't want to tackle high. You don't want them to tackle low. You don't want to hit the quarterback when they're sliding, but then the quarterback when he does slide, can fake sliding and get up, and then he runs for 50 yards. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So this is pretty common sense to me.
Yeah, the whole thing with that, Noah, is the whole purpose of a slide in football is that you're giving yourself up. You're not supposed to be hit. So why would the defender, when he knows you're not supposed to be hit when you go for a slide, why would he be trying to tackle you? They got it right here. I agree, Noah.
Defensive players who commit unsportsmanlike conduct penalties during a pass run play with the 15-yard penalty enforced from the inner run of pass like a personal foul. Don't have a major problem with that. If you're stupid enough to commit an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, I mean, you deserve the penalty, plain and simple. Uniform rules will change to require the sock and leg covering to go from the shoe to the bottom of the pants. Some of the NFL rule don't really care about that one. Illegal touching. This is more like an NFL rule as well, guys, but this is one I actually don't mind. Intentional illegal touching before pass by an ineligible receiver now includes a loss of down penalty in addition to the yardage. So that's always how the NFL has done it. You get the 5 yards and you also lose it down as well. Don't really have any major issues with that one. Points of emphasis for 2022 include defining the crown of the helmet more clearly for determining indicators for targeting. The forehead of the helmet is no longer an indicator of targeting. So I do like they're addressing targeting. I think that's been an issue for years. People questioning, well, was that the right call? You rejected a guy for something he probably didn't even mean to intentionally do. I like that they're putting more wording into the laws and whatnot for what they're looking for. And if they do make a mistake, they can now try and correct it and review it. Officials are instructed to err on the side of caution and call an injury timeout if a player is exhibiting concussion symptoms. I mean, anyone who has a problem with that, you're just nuts. That's common sense as well. More strictly enforcing disconcerting signal penalties on the defense side of the ball by calling penalties on defenders who make abrupt as actions, use a similar cadence to the offense, and use the clap to intend the offense to false start. Pretty simple as well. Don't try and intentionally do stuff to confuse the offense or you'll get a penalty. That makes sense to me. Continuing tightening up enforcement of taunting and sideline control. You could probably thank your guy Marcus Wilson for that one, Garth, with the shoe on the sideline or whatever. Or my guy George Pickens squirting somebody with a water bottle as well. Stuff like that just needs to, get put to rest, basically. And including passes in a passing posture with his focus downfield as a defensive player for the purpose of determining indicators of targeting and or roughing the passer. So overall, Garth, I think most of the rules are pretty common sense. I like that they're, adding stuff to targeting to make it clearer, make it reviewable, make a lot more stuff reviewable, and some rule changes that have made it to where a lot of the rules are more similar to the NFL now. So it's interesting. When I was reading those rule changes, I was like, there's a lot of really good stuff in there, which usually, especially when I'm reading the MLB rule changes, I'm like, oh my God, are you serious? This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. But when I was reading most of these, I was like, okay, I like that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, a lot of common sense rule changes here. That's what you like to see in sports. Actual changes that make sense. And you're like, okay, yeah, I understand the reasoning behind this. Also, if it's easier for us to understand as fans, guys, it's going to be easier for players to understand as players as well and not, commit these kind of penalties or at least know, what to stay away from while on the field. So, yeah, like I said, Noah, surprisingly, we got a sport who makes good rule changes here.
John saying, so is it illegal touching or pass interference? How will they decide between the two? Well, legal contact versus pass interference is, at least to my understanding, Garth, illegal contact, you touch anybody, like you grab their jersey like this or whatever. It doesn't matter if the ball is going their way. It's a legal contact, 5-yard penalty, and now it's an automatic first down in the NFL. Pass interference is the pass is literally going to this guy, and he just gets absolutely mugged while the ball is en route. That's the difference. Now, I will say, I don't know if you just mistyped, John. Illegal touching is not illegal contact. Illegal touching is when a receiver goes out of bounds, comes back inbounds, and he's the first guy to catch or touch the football. Big difference between that and pass interference. But, my understanding of illegal contact and pass interference, the difference was pass interference is the ball is right there. It's directed towards that guy. Whereas you can commit illegal touching against anybody. It doesn't matter if the quarterback's sitting in the backfield, making a pancake or whatever. You grab their jersey like that past the 5-yard from a couple yards from scrimmage mark, and you're going to get illegal contact. So now, this is the big part of the show. Let's go, Garth. We're going to start getting into actual predictions and stuff, conference champions. Real quick, I do just want to give I do want to put up the independents first since they're technically not a conference. But the independents for this year are New Mexico State, BYU, Army, Notre Dame, UConn, UMass, and Liberty. And like we said, a lot of those teams are going to be moving into conferences very soon, I think. But last year, Notre Dame and BYU were very good. Army went 9-4 as well. The Liberty Flames with Malik Willis at quarterback went 8-5, and then New Mexico State, UMass, and UConn. They're going to be moving. I think those three teams actually might be the ones that are moving to the Conference USA. I don't remember the exact teams, but I know at least two of those teams are going to be in conferences very soon. So we'll see what happens there. Army wins. Andrew is a big Army guy, so shout out to him there for that one. But yeah, we're going to do a new segment, Garth. We're going to call it No Huddle Picks, the Group 5 champions, because if we went in-depth on all freaking major conferences, we would be here for 5 hours. So we're just going to go one by one real quick. I'm going to put up the standings. We'll start with the Sun Belt. Now, this is including they added 4 teams, James Madison, and then I'll get them up again real quick, just because, honestly, they're slipping my mind as well. James Madison, Marshall, Old Dominion, and Southern Miss. You can add them to this list as well if you want to, Garth, for who you think might win the conference. But last year, App State and Louisiana were the top teams of their division. You know that very well because your guy Billy Napier was coaching at Louisiana, and they did win the championship last year, 24-16 over App State. So, no huddle here, Garth. Real quickly, you don't have to even explain it if you don't want to. Just pick a team. Who do you think wins the Sun Belt next year?
Yeah, I'm going to keep this one short and sweet, guys. I'm going with Appalachian State. They've been the powerhouse of that conference in recent years. Louisiana Lafayette obviously loses Billy Napier to Florida, and a couple of key players go along with him.
All right, nice. I'll go ahead and put that in. And just to be different, I'm going to go with Louisiana. I think a lot of the great recruits that Napier did recruit there over the course of 3 or 4 years are still there, and they're still a very solid team. So I definitely think App State and Louisiana will be the top teams again, might even face in the championship game again. But I'm going to give Louisiana a slight edge on this one. Now, next we have Conference USA. Conference USA is going to lose a ton of teams very soon, but for now they're pretty much still the same, other than teams like Southern Miss, Charlotte leaving. Western Kentucky did win the East last year with a 7-1 divisional record, 9-5 overall. And on the other side, how about the UTSA Roadrunners, Garth? They are going to be leaving for the American soon, but last year went 7-1 in conference, 12-2. They were undefeated late in the season. They were even ranked at one point. UAB as well went 9-4 last year, but I did just see a couple months ago that they did have their coach Bill Clark, who's been there for about 8 years now, very good head coach, did retire. So there's some question marks around them. So for this year, Garth, who do you have winning Conference USA?
Yep, I'm going to go with UTSA here. As you said, no, they're coming off a absolutely fantastic season. They return a lot of players. What's the most important position on the football field? Quarterback. Western Kentucky loses their guy, Bailey Zapp. Absolutely monster season last year, guys. Huge part of that offense. Leaves for the NFL. I'm going with UTSA to follow up on a good year and to win the division after they got upset in shootout fashion by Western Kentucky.
Yeah, I agree with you on this one, Garth. I think Western Kentucky, like you said, they lost their record-breaking quarterback in Bailey Zapp, and the Roadrunners are good, man. I mean, they're great last year. They're recruiting well, at least for being a Conference USA team. I mean, they've done so well. They got an invite to go to the Americans, so they can't be doing something too bad. So I'm going to go with UTSA as well. We agree on that one. Next, we have the Mid-Atlantic Conference, also known as the MAC, as I like to call it. This one, I mean, it's basically just pick whoever, because I'm going to be honest, Garth, I don't think I watched a single game of any of these teams last year. But I'm going to go with Northern Illinois solely for the fact that they've had some good players in the past, including my boy Michael Turner, who was also on your charges at one point, former Northern Illinois guy. I remember them being pretty good last year. They did go 6-2 in the conference and finished 9-5 overall versus Kent State, who also went 6-2 in the conference but 7-7. I'm going to give Northern Illinois my vote here.
Yeah, I thought we might have difference of opinion here now, but I have to agree. This is a team that was in the FCS for a while, absolutely dominant. They got moved up to the FBS, and they've held their own. They play a very physical brand of football, ground and pound, physical on both sides of the line of scrimmage. I really like them, and they're probably going to have their way this year. Maybe Kent State makes things difficult at some point or another, but really this is Northern Illinois' conference to lose, in my opinion.
All right, so we're 2 for 3 so far on agreeing. So that's good. Next, we have, I believe it is, yes, the Mountain West. This is an interesting one. And Andrew might like what I have to say on this one because there's some good teams in here. I think Utah State was very good, 6-2 last year in conference, 11-3 overall. But San Diego State, man, 7-1 last year in conference, 12-2 overall. I'm going with the Aztecs on this one, man. I think they get it done this year, and I think they will win the MWC. What about you on this one?
Yep. So I'm actually going to go out on a limb here, guys. I'm going to go with Boise State. I feel like they've had some down seasons these past few years. They're returning a lot of players. I think they've got a newer head coach who's starting to get his system up and running there. He's, starting to get comfortable, starting to get his guys in there. I like Boise State, kind of surprising, jumping up on a few teams this year and getting it done, winning the Mountain West.
All right, very impressive. Can never count out Boise State. They're always a very good team, and like you mentioned, they might be heading to the Pac-12 soon. So we'll see what happens. My little brother went to ULM, and he hates the fact that Louisiana Lafayette is always written as just Louisiana. Sorry about that, Andrew. It's just way easier to say than Louisiana Lafayette. If I'm talking about ULM, I'll just say, or Louisiana Monroe, I'll just say ULM. I mean, that's just what I've always done personally. John put in his predictions: ACC, NC State, Sun Belt, Old Dominion. That's a good one as well. Old Dominion's pretty good. SEC, Bama, Big Ten, Ohio State, Big 12, Baylor, Mid-American, Central Michigan. Looks like Andrew likes my pick. Glad you like that, Andrew. Fresno State will get the upset, John says. They were 10-3 last year, 6-2 in conference, so definitely not a stretch by any means. Garth, we're no longer friends. I was expecting that. Braves got the W. Let's go, Josh. I'd love to hear
we
that.
need to string some together, Josh. Let's go, right. Bravos.
Let's see. Next. Here we go. Last group 5, last of the quick-fire ones. We're going with the American. This one's a little tougher to predict because Cincinnati, they were great last year. They made the college football playoff, 8-0 in conference, 13-1 overall, but they lost a lot of guys. My guy Desmond Ridder, now on the Atlanta Falcons, led that comeback tonight. They lost him. He was their star quarterback. Lost a lot of guys. They're now ranked only number 22. Houston is probably their main competitor this year. They finished 12-2 last year, 8-0 overall. Other good teams in there, UCF. They did have Crazy Gus last year, and they did all right, but they did lose Dylan Gabriel to a transfer, which we'll be talking about later in our in-depth predictions. Who do you have in this one, Garth?
This one's where it gets tricky, guys. I would like to say Houston because they've really been impressive these last few years. Just something, gut feeling maybe, something tells me that UCF is going to have a good year. Yes, they lost Dylan Gabriel to transfer portal, but they also gained a lot in the transfer portal. Even a couple of my Florida Gators, actually, one in Kamari Gamble, who plays tight end. And, they're coming off a bad year, except for, the end of the year, they strung some wins together, but overall not the kind of season they hoped for. I think they're going to bounce back here now. I think they've kind of got a lot to prove this season, especially with moving out of the conference here soon. I like their chances here. I think they can pull this one off.
Yeah, definitely. Not an outrageous pick by any means. They were running the conference for several years there for quite a while, and they did, struggle a bit more last year because Cincinnati was absolutely incredible, and Houston was great as well. But I'm going to go out on a little bit different here. I'll say Houston gets it done. I think since he does take a step back this year, Houston, I think, still has a very good football team. And I'm going to pick them to just edge out teams like Cincinnati and UCF for the American title. And it's going to be an interesting year for the American, Garth, because this is the last year before this is the last year before they get about 6 friggin' teams coming in from the Conference USA and UAB, Florida Atlantic, Charlotte, North Texas, Rice, and UTSA. Those are the specific teams. And then, UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston are going to the Big 12 in a few years as well. So maybe the last year that we see the conference looking like that. But, Garth, that is it for our no huddle picks. Hope you guys like that segment. We're going to try and make that a segment every week to where we can just do, quick picks in 10 minutes. Not a lot of explanation, just real quick to get it out of the way. We did want to give the Group 5 a bit of screen time. It's tough because there's so 135 teams or whatever there is. We do want to try to give everyone at least a little bit of screen time. But now we're going to move on to the Power 5, which is, oh, by the way, I have made note of all our teams. So we will put this in our picks for later in the year when we're counting, and we'll see who was right at the end. So Garth has gone with App State, UTSA, Northern Illinois, Boise State, and UCF. I have gone with Louisiana Lafayette, UTSA, Northern Illinois, San Diego State, and Houston. So we'll see who's right on that one.
At least we've got some difference there. I like the fact that we're not just like consensus agreement.
Yeah, no. I honestly thought we would be, but we're not. So that's just going to see. We're going to move on to the Power 5, and I've ranked this, and I talked with this about this with Garth for the show, and he agreed with me with my ranking. I've tried to rank it by what I see to be the weakest Power 5 conference to the strongest. So in my estimation, the weakest Power 5 conference this year is going to be the Pac-12. I will put up the standings real quick. And by the way, I do want to say for the Power 5 ones, I've gone a little more in depth rather than just showing, the standings from last year and whatnot. I've got other stuff. I've got all conference teams. I've got the recruiting rankings in a picture as well. I've got media day predictions for the conference as well. So to start with the standings from last year, Oregon did win the North Division, going 7-2, 10-4. John did like that. What John did not like was the fact they lost 2 games to Utah in blowout fashion, including the conference championship game where Utah absolutely demolished them 38-10 to finish 8-1 in the conference and 10-4 overall. Had a great season last year. Other teams with winning records include the UCLA Bruins, who will be going to the Big Ten next year. Or, 2020, what was it, 24 or 25, Garth? I can't remember. I think it was 24.
Yeah, 24, I believe.
Yeah, UCLA had a great year last year, and they'll be going to a new conference very soon. Arizona State also won 8 games. Terrible season for USC, but other teams as well. How about Adam Miller? He switched teams to the Washington Huskies, and then they lost to an FCS team and finished 4-8 on the year.
Much like most of his new favorite teams, they went drastically downhill fast.
John's saying don't sleep on Tulsa, though. That's another team in the American that could do something. If I'm talking about Billy's old school, I'll just say Ucla. I agree with that, Bradley. That's a good one as well. Desmond Ritter with the 4th and 9 touchdown strike tonight for the win. He's got some fire in him. Andrew saying blasphemy. Oregon, but USC will be on their heels with Utah taking a huge step back.
This is the first comment that I do not agree with our guy John on. Not so much the Oregon USC take, more so the Utah take, because as Noah mentioned earlier in the show, they return almost their entire starting defense. They have a stud returning at quarterback in Cameron Rising. And I think the biggest benefit that they have, Noah, is that they got a coaching staff that's been there for a few years. They're established. There's a lot of continuity. There's a lot of experience, whereas a lot of these other teams that you might pick, brand new staffs, players are trying to learn a completely new system, and they're not returning as much as this Utah team. So
Andrew saying, remember, no divisions going forward for the Pac-12. Yep, it's gone to just basically like the Big 12, top 2 teams in the conference, make the championship game, and then play each other for it. So we'll pick our top 2 teams and then who we think wins that game. The Adam curse lives on. Yes, it does. The Seahawks also had a terrible season, traded Russell Wilson. They have about 6 players hurt that will miss half a season on Utah, so we'll see how that goes for them. But I also have, like I said, I have other things. I have recruiting rankings, which Garth and I typically use 24/7. So looking at that, the best 22 class actually went to Stanford, who had number 16 overall in 247. Other notables, Utah at 35, USC at 58, Oregon only at 64. I don't know how outdated these are. They seem very low for some of these teams. But I think the thing with USC is their recruiting will get there. I mean, they have Caleb Williams. That was a great addition for them at quarterback. That's a superstar quarterback on your team. But I think Riley needs a year or 2 to get his recruits in. I think they'll really be competing for the Pac-12 consistently. And while I think Utah may be good this year, I do agree longer term with John on the fact I think in the next few years it will be mainly USC and Oregon competing for it. But we'll see how that goes as well. We also had the Pac-12 Media Days, which is basically the predictions, what everyone thought. And 384 votes, 26 first-place votes have Utah winning the conference ahead of Oregon. Makes a lot of sense. And I think what we're seeing from this voting, Garth, is the consensus top three in all the teams we mentioned. It seems like Utah, Oregon, and USC, which I completely agree with. I think those are clearly the top three teams in the conference. And then there's some drop off. I think UCLA would be good, but I don't think they'll quite be as good as these top three. And then basically everyone else. And the media poll for the Pac-12 championship, I think if I remove the sticker at the bottom, it'll actually show three teams, which it does. Utah with 26 votes to win the Pac-12 championship, 2 for Oregon, and 5 for USC. So we'll see what happens there. All conference teams as well. This is massive. So I'm just going to say a few names of players. You did mention Cameron Rising earlier, Garth. He is second team. 10 players for Utah, I believe. No, 9, excuse me. So a lot of players for them. Caleb Williams, first team quarterback, superstar, like I said. Can't wait to see what he does here. Absolutely loved what I saw him from Oklahoma last year. Zach Charbonnet at UCLA, great running back. I loved what I've seen from him. And you know what? Caleb Williams also has, Garth. He has 2 first-team All-Pac-12 receivers to throw to, in Jordan Addison and Mario Williams. So we'll see what happens there. Some interesting names as well. Oregon with a couple guys on the defensive side as well. Brandon Dorius, and then a player I really love, Garth, Noah Sewell. I thought he was an absolute stud last season. They do also have, on the other side, Byron Cardwell at running back was a second teamer. Christian Gonzalez as well, defensive back. So a lot of really good players on the all-conference teams. They did also do some honorable mentions. This was the only conference I saw this with when I was getting this stuff. They were nice enough to get some honorable mentions. And one that really stands out to me, Garth, UCLA quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson, when I did watch him last year, was really impressed with him. He's mobile. He's dynamic. He's very talented. And you add that in with Charbonnet in the backfield, I think they'll have a great running game this year. And that's why I think they'll probably be the 4th best team in the Pac-12 this year. But we do have to get to our actual predictions, so let me go ahead and put up where is it? Oh, here's the standings as well, as if anyone wants to look at those from last year. But we're going to get to it, Garth. Who is going to be your Pac-12 champion this year?
Yeah, so I agree a lot with what you said, Noah, and that in the grand scheme of things, long term, Oregon and USC are going to be the teams that kind of run that division, the 2 powerhouse programs, if you will. My issue with the USC is not the offensive side of the ball. They've got a fantastic offensive line. Obviously, Caleb Williams, some studs at wide receiver. Lincoln Riley, offensive genius. But it's the other side of the ball. It's the defense. What is the defense going to do? Because, we've seen teams like Utah lately, how much damage they can do in the Pac-12 with a really, really good defense, especially when a lot of these teams tend to struggle on that side of the football. And then Oregon, they have a chance. I do think they have a chance. They've got your guy coming in, Dan Lanning, defensive-minded coach. Should definitely help play a part in getting a better brand of defense there in Oregon. But I like UCLA, like I said, Utah rather, not UCLA, guys, Utah. I like Utah a lot because they return a lot. I'm really high on Cameron Rising, at least at the college level, being able to lead that football team with the experience he has, and just having the most established coaching staff, most experienced group of players there. I like Utah winning, running it back to back there in the Pac-12.
Yeah, that's a good point as well, Garth. Not just the player experience for Utah, but the coaching. Kyle Whittingham has been there since Urban Meyer left, and that was like 18 years ago. I mean, the coaching staff has a lot of experience, definitely compared to guys like Lincoln Riley. And this is Dan Lanning's first head coaching job. Now, I love the guy. I mean, the guy's a phenomenal defense coordinator, but it is his first job. It's a major program. There is a lot of pressure there. And for USC, I think personally, USC takes off in 2023. I think this year they'll be much better than, 4-8 last year. That was embarrassing for them. I do think they'll be better this year, but as for directly competing for the conference, I don't know about that. So I think it's between Oregon and Utah. And funny enough, what do Oregon and Utah have in common, Garth? They both play our teams in week 1, both SEC teams as well. So I thought that was interesting as well. But as much as I would love to say Oregon, I think that Dan Lanning, he's still going to get some experience in, and Utah is returning a lot of guys. So I am going to agree with you on this one, Garth. I wish I couldn't, but Utah was great last year. I mean, when they played Oregon, it was just no contest. It wasn't even, none of those games were even close.
Suffocated their offense.
Absolutely. So I do think Dan Lanning there is going to be great in a few years. I think he'll be competing for the conference consistently until USC leaves, at least. But for right now, I will pick Oregon. So we do agree on that one. We shouldn't even be talking about USC as long term in the conference. They only have 2 more seasons in the conference. Well, next year, I guess. Maybe long term isn't the right term, but definitely next year. I think USC will be easily competing for it. Next is the ACC. We're going to talk about the ACC real quick because very interesting conference this year. Last year, Garth, excuse me. Clemson was pretty much the clear favorite, like they are most years. The All Clemson Conference, as some people like to call it. But they had a down year, like we said. Now their down year is still going 10-3, so it wasn't all terrible. But for their standards, some people had them go into the playoffs. It was a very bad season for them, and by comparison, it was a fantastic season for teams like Pittsburgh and Wake Forest, who won their sides of the division and ended up meeting in the championship game. Good old Kenny Pickett versus Sam Hartman, and Kenny Pickett did win that duel, winning 45-21 in the championship game. But there's some concerns for the teams that won their divisions last year. First of all, the Panthers no longer have Kenny Pickett. He's on our good buddy Brandon Kring's Pittsburgh Steelers now as a rookie, so we'll see how that works out for them. Wake Forest, unfortunately, like you said, Garth, Sam Hartman is out indefinitely with what has been described as a non-football related medical condition. Like you said earlier, Garth, I agree completely. Wish them all the best. I hate when people see stuff like this and they're like, well, how does this affect Wake Forest's season this year? And I'm like, bro, this is bigger than football. We don't know what it is. Obviously, they're being very private about this, but I read a quote, and the guy was like, this is something that could happen to anybody. So I have no clue what it is, but it's very serious. So, we'll see what happens there. But, losing your quarterback, unfortunately, is going to hurt their chances. But the most important thing is that hopefully all goes well with him and he's okay and, able to lead a normal life because, that's more important than what your football team does next season. NC State, which John mentioned earlier, very good team, bringing back Devin Leary, who was first team All-SEC quarterback for this year in the preseason. We'll see how that goes. And then obviously the other main contender is Clemson. Miami, they were 7-5 last year, 5-3 in conference. They get a ton of great recruits with their NIL money. But like you said, Garth, I just can't take Miami seriously. They have this hype every single year, and then they get absolutely destroyed. Remember when, I know it's Alabama, but remember when they played Alabama last year, and some people were like, hey, Miami might upset them. Alabama doesn't have a good offensive line this year. Maybe they can get it done. And then it was like 35-3 by halftime or something. It got so bad, Garth. I went out and mowed my lawn the second half of the game. And I did not miss anything the rest of the game because the score barely changed at all after that. But I just can't take Miami very seriously. Recruiting-wise, top teams, I was able to sort this one. I don't know why I could sort this one, and I couldn't with the others. But on this one, Clemson was top on 24/7 at number 10. North Carolina is number 11. I do know that's accurate because we literally just saw those earlier when I put up the screen share. Miami, number 16 with the NIL deals as well. Florida State, they recruited well at number 20, but their coaching sucks. They brought back Mike Norvell, as you like to call him, emphasis on the L's, Garth, because he hasn't had a winning season in God knows how many years, and the program as a whole was just a total disaster. But other teams that seem to be contenders, NC State at 64, Wake Forest at 71, and Pittsburgh is so freaking low. I got to take down the ticker. They're down at 76, which is actually dead last in the ACC. So that is not great for them. But recruiting-wise, looks like Clemson and North Carolina. I didn't mention North Carolina either. That's another team I think we should respect when we talk about the ACC. I know they were a disappointment last year, but Mac Brown is still there. I think he's a very good coach, so we'll see what they do. Now, media day predictions as well. Pretty much everyone and their mama is picking Clemson to win the Atlantic this year, ahead of NC State and then Wake Forest in third. Whereas in the Coastal, over 1,000 votes, and 98 first place votes, compared to 38 votes in second, have the Miami Hurricanes winning their division ahead of the Pittsburgh Panthers and the North Carolina Tar Heels. And we also have a poll for who they think will win the ACC championship, and 103 votes for Clemson. The next team is NC State with 38, and then it drops all the way down with Miami with 8. And two brave souls have somehow said that Florida State will win the ACC next year. Love the confidence, guys. Don't think it's going to happen, but we'll see if it does. And then they also did one on Player of the Year, which I thought was interesting. Devin Leary with 40 votes, beating out Sam Hartman with 30. Unfortunately, like we said, he's probably not going to be in contention for that this year. Tyler Van Dyke, who you mentioned earlier, Garth, he's an absolute stud. 21 votes for him as well. I just don't think the team around him is as good as a lot of people will make it out. I know they got a lot of guys that paid a lot of guys deals, and that's their right to. But they just underachieve all the time, man. I don't know. I don't have a good feeling about them. And then all ACC teams, Devin Leary, like I mentioned earlier, first team all ACC with 56 votes. Will Shipley is a guy I want to keep an eye on this year as well, guards for Clemson. I think he's a very talented player. He's been buried behind some guys, the past year or two on the depth chart, but I think getting some more playing time this year as well will be important for them. A.T. Perry, he was one of my favorite players to watch in the ACC last year, playing for Wake Forest, just an absolute stud. And some other guys that pop out, two defenders for Clemson, Miles Murphy and Brian Parisi, and Trenton Simpson. I actually missed him, so there's three. Three as well for NC State and Drake Thomas, Peyton Wilson, and Tanner Engel. So some interesting teams here. This is one of the toughest conferences, I think, Garth, because it was a complete surprise last year that Pittsburgh and Wake Forest were in the championship game. Clemson fell off. People expected North Carolina to be like the second best team in the ACC. They were terrible. Sam Howell went from the number 2 consensus ranked quarterback for 22 draft to being drafted by, what was it, the Washington Redskins in the 4th round or something. Garrett's fired up about him, I know, but he dropped off big time. So this is tough. Who do you have winning the well, first of all, Garth, who do you have in the championship game? Because I don't think we did that for the last one. You might have said Utah and Oregon, but who are the two teams you have in the championship game, and who do you have winning?
Yeah, so what makes it hard is the one side is kind of stacked with Clemson and NC State both being on the same side of things. Obviously, both of them can't make it in. It's really tough because Clemson's coming off a quote unquote a bad season. Really, they just struggled very badly offensively, bad quarterback play. If that can just improve and they can have a very similar type of defense as what they had last year, this is a team that very well could bounce back, be right in contention for a college football playoff spot. I don't know if I have the faith in DJ at QB. He hasn't, with exception of that one game where he filled in for Lawrence, I haven't seen it from him. And for me, NC State, there's no question mark at quarterback. So I think that NC State probably wins it on that side of things, just slightly, though. The Clemson's not going to make it easy, even if they don't have a full-on bounce back here. The other side of the conference, can you throw that up real quick again, Noah, for me?
I got you. There you go.
So we've got Pitt, Miami, VTech, Virginia. A lot of people will probably pick Miami like we saw in that preseason poll, but much like you said, I'm just not into the hype. These dudes are like the Cowboys of college football, where they're like, 20 years ago, you didn't want to play us, but don't ask us about what we've done lately. That's the side that's very tricky to me. I guess I could see realistically, I could see North Carolina bouncing back up there because they do have Mac. Last year, they couldn't overcome who they lost to the draft. Howell played bad, as you said, but also, he lost a lot of his weapons. His offensive line was bad. I got a feeling that VTech is going to pull off some magic, and they're going to win it on that side of things. Let's go with the NC State VTech conference final with NC State winning the ACC this year.
Old take by Garth, having VTech in the finals, or the conference championship, excuse me. But he hasn't gone up against NC State, and he has NC State win it. So I think he agrees with our man John there on that one. I believe John also said that NC State would win it. Me personally, like you said, this is tough because there's so many teams that really overachieved last year in Pittsburgh, Wake Forest, and then teams like North Carolina, Clemson, who we thought would be favorites, had disastrous seasons. NC State, you always got to respect them. They're always a pretty competitive team in the ACC. To me, I just can't see Clemson have another season like they did last year, Garth. I have to think that was a fluke because everything else I've seen them do under Dabo Swinney has shown that was a one-off, a outlier, if you will. Now, if they lose 3 or 4 games again this year, you'd have to start really questioning something. But to me, Dabo is still a top 3 coach in football. Like, if you want to put Saban and Smart ahead of him, fine. But I think off his, career accomplishments, I don't think there's anyone else you could put ahead of him. I think he's going to get those guys right. I do think losing Venables, because like I said, and you mentioned Garth, DJ was terrible last year, and their offense was not very good. Their defense was the reason they won 10 games, and they did lose Brent Venables, who was the DC, to go to a head coaching job to Oklahoma. So I think that's a big loss for them. But, I mean, they're still getting recruits in, top recruiting class of 2022 in the ACC, right there with North Carolina, who I do predict they will play in the ACC championship game. I think it will actually be North Carolina versus Clemson. I think both those teams bounce back. They both have very solid head coaches, good recruits as well. I mean, these were 2 favorites last year. I think they will bounce back because I think teams like Wake Forest and Pittsburgh take a step back. And I think NC State will be good, but I have Clemson beating them out in that division by a game or 2, something like that. I think it'll be close, but I think in the end, Clemson will just edge it. And I think they'll play North Carolina in the conference championship game. And I am going with the Clemson Tigers to rebound big time this year. I think they will win the ACC. So we'll see what happens there. My last Clemson prediction from last season was not great because I had them in the playoff. I thought they would beat Georgia and all that, and they did not. So we'll see if that prediction goes a little better for me. But the next one we have, Garth, the Big 12. This was a great conference to watch last year, Garth. It honestly surprised me. That championship game between Baylor and Oklahoma State, I mean, it was just absolutely through a goal line stand at the end by Baylor to win it. Gary Bohannon was out of that game, so the backup quarterback Blake Shapen came in and did a very good job. He actually won MVP of the Big 12 championship game as Baylor won it 22-16. And like we mentioned earlier with the Pac-12, when Andrew brought up, this is another team that does no divisions, so it's just the top 2 teams in the conference record. They get in and they play in the championship game. Don't have to worry about winning your division or any stuff like that, which I do want your thoughts on that real quick, Garth, by the way. Do you prefer when these conferences had, you have to win your division or whatnot? Or do you like it more when it's just, there's 10 teams or whatever, top 2 teams in the record getting the championship game?
I think there's a case to be made for both, honestly. I do like having, aligned in division since there is so many teams. It's a lot different than the NFL where you're not just having a 4-team division. But on the same side of things, ultimately what do you want to see in your conference matchup? You want to see the 2 best teams in the conference go at it, and unfortunately, a lot of times you can have it where, one of the teams gets in is really deserving on the other side. Maybe the division's really down that year.
Mm-hmm.
And, you're getting a team in there that really isn't one of the top 2 teams in the division, but because their division was weaker, they're making it in over somebody else. I don't know. That's something that I would really have to sit down and think long and hard about because there's a case for both. Ultimately, however it pans out, I just want to see the 2 best teams from that conference playing each other in the conference championship. That's one I'd have to think about, honestly.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think I can see both sides of it. Like, to be honest, Garth, like if the SEC removed the divisions, I wouldn't know what to do with myself because that's just what I've always grown up with. You think about the rivalries within your division, honestly, more so than sometimes even the championship game. You think at the very start of the season, you're thinking about the Georgia-Florida game, stuff like that. You're not thinking about, are we going to face Alabama or whatnot? You're thinking, all right, can we beat our biggest rivals of the season? Can we beat Florida? Can we beat Tennessee? Now, I would say, like you said, it probably is better overall to have the 2 best teams because you can have, for example, you could have a division that's really terrible and a team goes 7-5 and they win their division, and then they play a team that just went 14-0 or 12-0, and something like that. And conversely, it's also, I don't think it's personally fair that a team could finish second in a division with 10 wins or whatever and miss out to a team that won 7 games out of division just because that 10-win team lost a game to the best team in the conference. So I would probably say overall it probably is better how conferences like the Pac-12 and Big 12 do it. But I do think it's a very interesting debate, like you said. It's a tough call. The Padres ring history, World Series 0, ring 1. We've been over this. Andrew says the Padres ring history, World Series 0, worm 1. Fuck that. I don't know what Mikey is on right now. I think he's on some shrooms or something. Maybe he's been on the coke or drinking, but I have no clue what this guy is talking about right now. But anyway, moving on to the Big 12, we're going to put up some more stuff here in a moment about the Big 12. Like I said, last year, Oklahoma State and Baylor did meet in the conference championship game, both with 12-2 records at the end of the season. But Oklahoma State was 8-1 versus Baylor 7-2. But in the championship game, like I said, Baylor got it done with the goal line stand at the end to win 21-16. Oklahoma, and this is what's funny to me, Garth, right? Oklahoma, it was like, oh my God, they've had such a terrible year. Oklahoma's been so down this year. They still went 7-2 in conference and 11-2. They barely missed out. They missed out because they won key divisional games. They lost key divisional games. They lost to Oklahoma State, and who was it? Was it Texas, Garth? I know they lost to another big rival for them. I'm going to look it up real quick because it's slipping my mind. I know they lost to Oklahoma State. See, they lost to Oklahoma State.
When they played Texas, they had that major comeback late. Texas was up huge.
Yeah. Sorry, Texas fans.
I know they came very close to losing to West Virginia, but they didn't actually lose.
Yeah, poor Texas. They get so close to beating Oklahoma. I try to remember if they ever have, and Oklahoma just keeps coming back on them. But I looked it up, Garth. They lost to Baylor and Oklahoma State, the two teams finished ahead of them. So they were right there. They just lost key games. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do this year with Venables at head coach. Recruiting as well. We're going to look at Oklahoma State was number 8 at 40 on 24/7, but Texas coming in at number 5. Getting Arch Manning will help you with that ranking. Actually, no, it won't because these are 22 rankings and he's a 23 prospect. I'm an idiot, but it is what it is. Other teams, Oklahoma State at 29, Baylor 37. So the two main teams, Oklahoma and Texas. Funny enough, Garth, what two teams is it again that are moving to the SEC in a few years from this conference?
That would be Oklahoma and Texas.
Okay, so I wonder why they're by far the best recruiting teams in this conference. But, it is what it is, man. Big 12 media days as well. 365 votes of 17 first-place votes. I believe that's how you read it for Baylor to win the conference ahead of Oklahoma. Then Oklahoma State with 9 first-place votes. Texas with 2. And someone even gave Iowa State a first-place vote. That's interesting. But I think to me, Garth, in this conference, I'll just put up these teams real quick. There's way too many players. Spencer Sanders, first team, all Big 12. I don't like him, Garth.
I don't either. We talked a lot about him on the show last year. We both were in agreement that he kind of was the piece that held this team back. A lot of costly turnovers, and he didn't have – I wouldn't say he had terrible offensive numbers in terms of overall production, but definitely not at an elite level in college football, combined with a lot of costly turnovers. I agree here, Noah.
Yeah, he just wasn't great in the big games, man. Like that Baylor game, he threw like 4 interceptions, if I remember right. He was not good. They needed a comeback, if I remember right, against Texas, because he was struggling big time, and Texas got off to a good start. They had to come back and win that game. So not too sure about that one. I know a lot of quarterbacks left this conference, but, I don't know. We'll see what happens, man. When I saw that, kind of like you, I was just shaking my head a little bit. Bijan Robinson, Offensive Player of the Year, running back preseason award for him, A defensive preseason player of the year is, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name, Felix Uzoma, defensive end at Kansas State. He's a junior. I butchered Nelson's name. I'm not going to try and butcher two names in the same show. And then newcomer of the year, Garth, and we mentioned him earlier when we were talking about UCF, Dylan Gabriel transferred to Oklahoma to replace Caleb Williams. We'll see what he does this year as well, but just some phenomenal players in this conference. Like I said, Bijan Robinson, first team as well. Deuce Vaughn at Kansas State. I really like what I've seen from him. Xavier Worthy's another player I really like. And Ben Sims. I thought he was a beast for Baylor last year as well. Big 12 all defense. We got a couple good Baylor guys here as well. Siaki Ika, if I did not butcher that name. And Dylan Doyle as well. Will McDonald at Iowa State. Uzoma, who I mentioned earlier, at Kansas State. Colin Oliver on the defensive line, and Jason Taylor from Oklahoma State. A guy from our good buddy Brennan Crean's West Virginia Mountaineers, and Dante Stills on the defensive line. And then a couple of Kansas State players as well. Even a Kansas player, Garth, Kenny Logan Jr. You got to be great, man, to get into an all Big 12 team when you're playing for the Kansas Jayhawks. Man, they are just not very good at all. But, we do have to get in our predictions, Garth. I think like the ACC, I think there's three main teams that are favorites, which are Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Oklahoma. I know another team, maybe a Texas, big time rebounds because they have got great recruiting classes now. I just don't see it. I kind of view Texas, Garth, as Miami. I think they're a team that every year has a lot of hype. They get good recruits in, and for whatever reason, they underachieve. They had one great season that year where they beat UGA in the bowl game. I'm sure you remember that because you were trolling me over it every week. But other than that, man, I just think they underachieve all the time. I don't see them doing anything this year. I think it'll be between the three teams that I mentioned. So, Guard, who do you have making a championship game, and who do you have winning it in the Big 12?
Oh, yeah. So I think that I think we very well could get a Baylor-OK State matchup. As far as who I have winning, Baylor. I like Baylor a lot. Very high on this football team, guys. I like who they got at quarterback. I like that they returned their coaching staff. The defense is kind of underrated as well. I wouldn't say they're like an elite unit in college football, but they definitely can hold their own. And probably the second best in the conference behind OK State, who's always known to have solid defensive units. Mm-hmm. The issue is two things why I don't give the edge to OK State. They lost their longtime defensive coordinator, and also they lost a lot of veteran leadership on that defense to either graduation or to the draft. That's why I give the edge to Baylor. And then, Oklahoma, the reason why I'm not putting them in that championship conversation is just because, I think has always got a lot of question marks on the defensive side of things. Obviously, we got to see how Dylan Gabriel adjusts to playing in the Big 12 and a new coaching staff. So, that's why I don't think they'll be too far off. But, yeah, Baylor, I like this team a lot. No, I think they got a good year ahead of them.
Yeah, and I do just want to throw in another reason why I would prefer Baylor to Oklahoma State guard. Spencer Sanders, like we mentioned. I think he struggled last year in some key games, and Blake Shapen, whoever it is taking over, they have more potential. And honestly, I'm not impressed with them. I don't come on here to bash players, guard. That's not what we do. We're usually very fair to everyone, but just from all I saw, and I watched a ton of Oklahoma State games last year. I watched like 4 or 5, and just every time I watched him, he's just inconsistent, man. So I don't trust Oklahoma State over Baylor. I think Oklahoma State will be good this year, but like you said, guard, Baylor has a great defense. They have some really good guys returning, experience as well. They were great last year. They beat Oklahoma. They beat all the major teams they needed to beat in the conference. There was even a point guard where Baylor were in talks as being a long shot to make it the playoff. Now, they needed to win the conference championship and have about 3 or 4 teams lose to do it, but they were at least in the convo. So I think Baylor's a great shout out. But, Garth, I'm going to go against the grain here a bit at least. I got Clemson redeeming themselves in the ACC, and this one's definitely a bit more out there, I think, than the Clemson one. But I'm going to pick Oklahoma. I think they can rebound. I think they got great recruits. I love Venables. Like, that was my head coach signing of the offseason, guard. What he did at Clemson last year, you can say, and I think John said it as well, something similar to, first year Brent Venables' team will win, but Baylor and Texas are my favorites for Big 12. But he also said that Oklahoma lost their quarterback and 2 wide receivers that transferred to SC. Well, John, my response to that be Venables didn't have a very good quarterback last year either and a terrible offense, and he still won 10 games with the most disappointing Clemson team ever. So I think if he can get that defense in shape, Garth, and what has Oklahoma always lacked? They've always had these great offenses, but they've never had a defense. It's fine when they're playing in conference. They can get it done. They can make the playoff. But then they play a team like Alabama that has as good an offense, if not better, but what they really have is a defense that's 10 times better. I think if he can get that defense in shape, okay, fine. I would agree that Oklahoma's offense has taken a step back. If you're asking me to choose between Caleb Williams and Dylan Gabriel, I mean, I like Gabriel, but the choice is Williams every day of the week. But he's going to have a perfect, what do you call it? Even though Lincoln Riley isn't there and the offense take a step back, they still get good recruits in. He's still going to have a good atmosphere. And plus, Garth, I mean, this is a conference that for the most part, it was a bit different last year. But for the most part, it's not very good defensively. So I think it's going to be a little easier for him to settle in than it might be compared to at least last year. So I think there's a few reasons. I think Venables will improve the defense, and I think Gabriel will have tools around him to succeed right away. And plus, like I said, not only the recruits, I mean, they had like the number 8 class this year, Garth. But that season last year where Oklahoma was like, oh my God, they've had such a terrible season. What is Oklahoma doing? They lost 2 games. They're 1 game out of being in the championship game, and that's because they lost the 2 teams that finished ahead of them. I don't think they're really as bad as people say they are. And don't get me wrong, I still hate them because, when we were doing our pick 'em last year, I picked Oklahoma in like the 2 games they lost, and they heavily contributed to me having to write that bullshit essay I wrote about Billy Napier. But I'm putting my faith in them again, man. I think they can rebound. I'm going with 2 redemption stories in Clemson and Oklahoma winning their conferences. Now, that is not what I meant to click on. Please go away. Garth, I don't know about you, but to me, this is probably unbiasedly my favorite conference to watch in college football. I even like it more than watching most SEC games, which is the Big Ten. Watching teams like Michigan and Ohio State duke it out. And what I mainly love about the Big Ten is its identity, Garth. A lot of run-first offenses, teams build around the offensive line, just old-school football. And I know I'm a younger guy, but I personally love that old-school feel rather than the conferences, like the Pac-12 or whatever, or the Big 12 where you have guys passing for 300-400 yards a game, which I'm good for every now and then. But I like to see, games where you have to win at the line of scrimmage because what is what you always said, Garth? Pretty much every football game is won at the line of scrimmage. You need to build on the lines. You need to run the football. And that's what a lot of these Big Ten teams do. So I'm going to put up the standings from last year so we can take a look at them real in depth. And this is kind of your point, Garth, really about the conferences. Because you can tell when you look at these divisions, the East was way better than the West last year. And this is why, you might say, well, just get rid of conferences, have it be the top 2 teams. Because, Iowa wins the conference 7-2, they win the division in the West 7-2, conference record 10-4. But then look at the East, Guard. You have 3 teams that finished in the top 10 last year in Michigan, Ohio State, and Michigan State that all have better records overall than Iowa. Michigan 7-2 in conference. Ohio State and Michigan 8-1. 12-2 record for Michigan. They were in the college football playoff. Got boat raced by the future national champions. Ohio State 11-2. They were right there in the playoff mix as well. Michigan State, Garth, was number 3 on the season at one point. And okay, fair enough. They got humiliated by Ohio State. It wasn't even close. But I mean, those are 3 teams right there that I think are way better than Iowa were last season. And 2 of them aren't even in the championship game. So I think it's definitely, the biggest type of argument you could make for no divisions in the conferences. But Michigan did end up winning against Ohio State 42-27. Got that monkey off their back, and then they just dominated Iowa in the championship game 42-3 to win the conference and go to the playoff. Recruiting rankings as well. Obviously, Ohio State's going to be top, number 4 and 24/7. Penn State surprisingly coming in at number 6, and other teams that are doing well. Michigan at 9, Michigan State at 23. So some good recruiting teams as well. Somehow Indiana was number 21 when they won like 2 games last year. So that's an interesting one that stands out a bit. Big Ten Media Day predictions. Let me just remove this real quick so we can see all this. The divisions, Ohio State, they have winning their division with 252 points, 36 first-place votes. No one else voted for anybody, funny enough. No first-place votes for anyone else in that division. Michigan with 203 points, so they have Ohio State as a clear favorite in that division. Wisconsin picked to win the West, 246 points, 31 first-place votes, compared to only 3 for Iowa, 2 for Minnesota as well. And then Big Ten championship polls, they have Ohio State winning every one of them, but 31 have them beating Wisconsin, whereas 3 have them beating Iowa and 2 have them beating Minnesota. Next, Player of the Year candidates. This is something I liked as well, Garth. They actually did a vote for who they thought would win Player of the Year, and surprise, surprise, the top 2 on the offensive side, C.J. Stroud and Jackson Smith and Jigba, just absolutely dominating. Can totally get that. I think they're going to destroy college football defenses this year. I think C.J. Stroud is a top 2 quarterback in the nation. And I mean, we saw what JSN did last year, Garth. He was an absolute superstar. I mean, him, Wilson, and Olave just taking the top off defenses over and over. On the defensive side, Jack Campbell, a linebacker for Iowa, no relation to Edmonton Oilers goalie Jack Campbell, as you would call him, Soup Campbell, Garth. They are not the same person. He does not play D sports. It's a linebacker for Iowa. He got 74 points and 20 first-place votes ahead of Nick Herbig, linebacker for Wisconsin, who always have great defenses. Jim Leonard did a great job with them last year as a top 2 defensive unit, I believe. I think they were right there with Georgia in most of the defensive rankings, at least like yard per play wise. Obviously, I think points per game wise, UGA was historically good, but very good defense for them. Zach Harrison, who's a stud on Ohio State as well, and Riley Moss, cornerback for Iowa, gets a first place vote as well. So this is another very interesting conference guard, but plain and simple. Michigan was great last year, but there's a lot of talk about them taking a step back. They lost Aiden Hutchinson. They lost Daxton Hill, who was the captain in their secondary. Lost a lot of players. And plus, there's also Jim Harbaugh, who, don't get me wrong, they got it done last year, but, there's still question marks around him. Now, you do want to give respect to the defending champs. But when you think about the fact Ohio State, had a down season, they lost to Oregon, lost to Michigan, whatnot. Kind of like Oklahoma, Garth. They were still right in the running to the very end, and they just let it slip towards the end. You have a superstar quarterback in C.J. Stroud. Offense is loaded. Defense is very good as well. You still have the guy born in third base over there, as well as Jim Harbaugh likes to say, and Ryan Day. But, he has some question marks, but, he's a good head coach at least. He's still recruiting very well, even with Urban Meyer gone. So you're starting to get to the point where we're going to see it where it's fully his team, basically. And the other teams in the conference, Iowa and Penn State, they had their moments, but then they fell off. Michigan State was very good, but they don't have Kenneth Walker anymore. Wisconsin has great defenses. My question more is on the offensive side. What's their quarterback situation going to be good like? Because they've struggled there for years. They can always run the ball. They can defend. But they've never been, what I'd call elite offensively since they've had Russell Wilson there, so, which was 11 years ago now. So there's a lot of teams in the mix for this one, Garth. But I do think from what I've seen, there seems to be a clear favorite. So who do you have making the championship games here, Garth? And I'll put it up real quick here so you can see the teams again.
Yeah.
And who do you have?
I've definitely got Ohio State on the east side of things. Like you said, Noah, they're probably the most well-rounded team on that side of things. The offensive firepower is absolutely unreal. C.J. Stroud's a stud. He's going to have a monster season, firmly be in Heisman talks. The wide receiver core is there. They've got some solid running backs, good offensive line. The defense by no means is elite, but I think they're serviceable. They got a lot of talent. They just got to put it together. Michigan State, I just think that they lost, really the workhorse of that offense. The one guy who kind of made everything else around him work and fall into place, and Kenneth Walker. And Michigan, I don't think they take a huge step back where, they're not competing to potentially go to the conference championship and win that East. But I don't think they've got enough to match up with Ohio State this year. I think Ohio State and Ryan Day are going to be really hungry to beat those guys, get some revenge for that last season. That picture of those fans storming the field like they just won the Super Bowl, that's firmly in the back of the mind of these players and this coaching staff. And we saw it once, Noah. You remember Ryan Day, Clemson, college football playoffs. He talked all week long to his players. These guys said they're going to come out and smoke you. It's not even going to be close. And Ohio State came out firing. So I like them on the east side of things. Over there on the west, the team I'm rooting for, Minnesota. I like that team a lot. The Gophers row the boat. I just think Iowa's got that one wrapped up, at least for right now. All those teams are kind of playing catch up. I think they're the safe pick on that side of things. I would love to be wrong. I would love to see Minnesota win it. They got some votes. I just don't think they have quite enough. Iowa's kind of got it made over there on the west side. The defense is going to be absolutely phenomenal again. If the quarterback play is just halfway decent, they should be all right. I've got Ohio State, Iowa, Big Ten championship, Ohio State winning it all. Not winning it all in terms of national championship, winning it all in terms of the Big Ten guys. So don't turn me into a meme.
Well, they are ranked number 2. Some people do think they can win the title, Garth. I'm in some Facebook groups about college football, and man, you won't believe some of these Ohio State. They act like their team has won 10 straight national titles. They're like 10 times better than every other team in existence. Great point by John, because Scott Frost, man. I mean, look, I will say this in all seriousness, Garth. Nebraska deserves better. I know people want to troll them for how terrible they are, how bad they were under Bo Pelini and now Scott Frost. But there was a time when Nebraska was elite consistently.
I know.
Legendary.
I know.
Legendary program, and now they've been reduced to laughing stock. That's not right, man. Those fans in that program, they deserve better than that. They should be competing towards the top, and now they're just a laughing stock. So, tip my imaginary cap to John there. Nebraska deserves better, man.
I just want to say I'm so glad that Florida did not hire Scott Frost because he was firmly in the mix of things when Meyer left.
Josh Heupel was better than Scott Frost. He went to Tennessee and he did a pretty decent job. I just think Scott Frost was there at a time when the American was really bad. They went undefeated, quote unquote national champ, freaking jackasses. But and then he goes to Nebraska and okay, fair, it's not in a great situation, but I just think he's made it worse. I don't think they're getting better. I think they're declining still. And that's bad because they were already in a pretty bad spot as it was. Couple more comments here. Sooners get Oklahoma State -7 and Baylor -9.5 at home while facing Texas -2.5 on a neutral field. Still say they are overhyped. I would agree that those spreads seem a little bit high right now. The Big Ten. Michigan State should shock a lot of teams in the East, but on the West, it's Iowa, not even close. Andrew saying, I remember when Nebraska were a very good team. And then I like to see them hire Art Briles over Scott Frost. Well, I don't know about Art Briles because I don't know about the circumstances around him and stuff, whatnot. But, we'll see what happens. But, yeah, I definitely agree with Garth on the fact that Ohio State will win their side of the division. I think Michigan just takes a step back this year, man. They lost a lot, and let's be honest, it was a dream season for them last year, and even then it came right down to the end for them to beat Ohio State by 15 in a down year for the team. Michigan State, I think, losing Kenneth Walker, like you said, Garth, he was the workhorse, the cog, if you will, of that offense that made it work, and it's a step back. Now, I will say I absolutely love Mel Tucker for obvious reasons, but I don't think they're going to quite have enough to compete with Ohio State last year. They got killed by him last year, too, when they had what I think is a much better team this year. So I got Ohio State winning their side of the conference. On the other side, I think Iowa's a contender. I mean, John said they'll win it. It's not even close. But to me, and this is just me and Garth, I think Iowa's good. I think Minnesota's pretty good, but I don't think they're quite as good enough to win the division. Like you said, it'd be nice to see it happen. But I don't think it will. Purdue was pretty good last year. I mean, they beat Tennessee in a bowl game when Tennessee got robbed, and I love every single second of it, but I don't quite see them competing for the division. To me, Wisconsin, if they still have an elite defense like they did last year, if they can still run the ball, and I know that, Ches Malusi is still there. He was great for them last year. I really like him a lot at the running back position. My only question mark for them, what is Graham Mertz going to do at quarterback? Because I saw a good bit of him last year. Not really a fan of him. But, he does have, great running back, good offensive line, elite defense. He doesn't have the pressure of the world on his shoulders, Guard, is what I'm trying to say. He doesn't have to carry the team, if you will. And Iowa, I mean, they had a great start last year, Garth, but, after a while, they started to fall off. Spencer Petras, I'm not a fan of that guy at all at quarterback.
Yeah, me either. We talked a lot about that last year.
I think
much like Sanders at OK State, he kind of held that team back.
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest question mark for Wisconsin is also my biggest question mark for Iowa. But I personally have more faith in Wisconsin's running game, offensive line, and defense. So I have Wisconsin winning the side division. But, I mean, it doesn't matter. Any of these teams are going to get obliterated by Ohio State, I think. I think Ohio State wins this conference easily. I think they're going to be in the conference college football playoff. Might even be undefeated. They're going to have a bounce back this year. And, look, I don't like it. I can't stand Ohio State. Absolutely despise them, honestly. I think a lot of their fans are absolute jokers. But I do know a few good ones. Jacob's a good guy. But, I mean, they have some nuts out there, man. No pun intended on that one. But, unfortunately, I think Michigan State take a step back. I think other teams like Wisconsin, Iowa will be good. But, I mean, it's Ohio State. Man, they got C.J. Stroud, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Their defense still has a lot of guys there from last year. Travion Henderson at running back. I mean, they're just loaded. I think they're just easily the best team in this conference. Ohio State will take an L against Penn State. That's usually how it works for them. They lose a game they shouldn't. Penn State has given them some good games in the past. I remember when Saquon was there, and Penn State just absolutely blew a game. They should have beaten Ohio State, and they didn't. They choked it away. But Garth and I both going with Ohio State. We agree on that one. Now, lastly, And we don't have to spend as much time on this one, Garth, because we already went over the SEC. We already said we both have Georgia winning the SEC East. So it's more a conversation about the West. Tom saying, what happened to Zach Wilson? Good Lord. I haven't seen the play. I looked it up. Some people think he tore his ACL, which would not be good for him at all. So we'll have to see what comes out about that one. But I'll put up the standings here real quick, Garth. And this is definitely a conference we could talk a lot more in depth about because we know it easily the best. But I'll put up the standings from last year. Georgia did go 8-0 in the division, in the regular or the conference, in the regular season. 14-1 overall. Kentucky, who was undefeated until they played Georgia, and then they lost. And they lost 3 games of the conference by the end to go 10-3. Tennessee 7-6 lost to Purdue in a bowl game. On the other side, Alabama easily won this division pretty much. A 7-1 record, 13-2 overall. Edging out Ole Miss by the end, Arkansas, and then Texas A&M, Guard. 5th place after they beat Alabama. Just absolutely ridiculous. Andrew completely forgot about the SEC. Well, you didn't.
That year LSU had, he wanted to forget about it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about that, man. But, A&M's got to step it up big time this year. Obviously, in the championship game, Alabama did win that meaningless game in the SEC championship game because by the end, Georgia got their revenge. Won the thing that actually mattered. Obviously, I'm just being slightly salty because Alabama's still a phenomenal team. But in the end, Georgia did come out on top in the national championship game, and that's what mattered more. Recruiting-wise, Alabama 24/7 has them number 2 ranked, behind only A&M. Georgia at number 3. Other teams coming in, Garth. Florida at number 17. I honestly think they're higher than that now because they've gotten you like to tell me about the 4 stars they're getting.
Is this supposed to be the current rankings or the class that they have coming in from like the last recruitment cycle?
It should be 2022.
Okay, yeah. No, so I think this is probably the incoming class. Well, like the kids that are already there for this season, rather. Because I do believe we finished 17th last year.
Yeah.
Like this most recent class.
Gotcha. Tennessee coming in at number 18 as well. Missouri somehow number 15. LSU, Kentucky. Other teams finishing highly, but the main contenders as usual, Guard. Georgia and Alabama are right up there, and then A&M gets number 1 with a lot of NIL deals. And look, we already discussed that months ago. The spat between Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban. A lot of drama coming in there. But yeah, media day predictions. This is where I disagree a bit. Georgia and Alabama win the divisions. I don't have a problem with that. But how is it that only 18 people picked the defending national champions, Guard? I'm not even saying this biasly, right? Now, I could see ranking Alabama ahead of Georgia. I get it. They get benefit of the doubt because, they've been champions for longer. But the fact the gap is 140 votes, I think is a bit ridiculous. I think it should be closer than that. If Alabama has more, that's fine. But the fact that it's this ridiculously one-sided when we saw just 7 months ago. Now, I get Georgia lost a lot, but they're getting to the point, Garth, where they can start recruiting consistently in the top 3 like Alabama has for years. And you know how Alabama is. People say, oh, they lost a lot every single year. And then they replace half the team. They're perfectly fine. If Georgia can get to that point where they're consistently drafting top 3 guard, it won't matter at some point how much they lose every year because they can replace it. So, I agree, Alabama probably will win the championship, SEC championship at least. But it'll be very close. I think 140 a vote gap is a joke, Garth. You let me know if I'm being a homer on that one, but I just think that's really big difference.
Yeah, no, I agree, Noah. I think that Alabama over Georgia, like you said, makes sense because they get benefit of the doubt. They've got Nick Saban. They've won so much under him. But for the gap to be as big as it is, basically everybody's writing Georgia off before the season's even started and totally forgetting about the fact that they just went out and won a national championship. So it's kind of crazy to me. But in honesty, and I think I talked about it a little bit before on one of our previous shows, if I'm a Georgia Bulldog fan, I love it. I don't want to be overhyped. I don't want to be the favorite. I want to be doubted a little bit.
Put it on the board, man.
Let them play because they did it last year too. Let them play into the underdog role. Let them be the guys that are trying to knock somebody else off. So yeah, like I said, a little bit ridiculous the gap, but it could end up working in your favor. We'll have to see.
Yeah, no, that's a great point as well, Garth. It's like what Nick Saban said after they beat us in the SEC championship game. I saw that rat poison you guys are putting out, man. Motivation, doubt in my team, whatnot. Put it on that bulletin board. I think that's a great point for me there, Garth. They just put it on the bulletin board. There's a bit of motivation. 158 people said Alabama was beating you this year. Are you just going to take that, roll over, and let them do that to you? Or are you going to go out and prove them all wrong and beat them? So I hope that's how they look at it. As a fan, obviously, I don't look at it quite that way because I don't go out and play Alabama or whatnot. I'm not really motivated by it, but they would be. So we'll see what happens there. SEC all conference teams, there's freaking 3 of them. So I'm just gonna highlight like 1 or 2 guys from every team. Obviously, Bryce Young and Jahmyr Gibbs, 2 guys from Alabama, are highlights. Tank Bigsby was a stud last year. Jermaine Burton. This is how it goes with UGA, Garth. Their transfers go to other teams, and all of a sudden, they're first-team guys. Brenton Cox on Florida for you guys is one of your best defensive players. Couldn't even sniff the field at UGA. Jermaine Burton goes to FSU, can't barely play on UGA. He wins ACC Defensive Player of the Year, man. Jermaine Burton had 12 catches maybe last year. Maybe a little bit more. I don't remember exactly. But he definitely wasn't a key focal point of the offense like a guy like Brock Bowers was. First team All-SEC. That's just how it goes. Speaking of Brock Bowers, first team All-SEC tight end. Makes sense because I'll say it right now, best tight end in the country, Garth. I don't even know if it's close. The guy's an absolute monster. You also throw in Darnell Washington as well, who you've said on record, Garth, is shaped like an alien.
That dude's that is a huge human being, guys. I remember the first time I ever saw that guy, I was just like, wow. He looked like an NBA center out there running routes.
Yeah, and he's not slow either, Garth. That's the thing. He's that big, and he's still ridiculously fast. So, defensively, Jalen Carter, big piece for Georgia this year. We'll see what happens. But yeah, about half this team is Alabama because their defense is loaded. Will Anderson is the best player.
Insane.
Best player in the country in my mind. I would have taken him number 1 in this draft, Garth, let alone next year if he keeps playing like he is. Stud. You add in Henry to
Yep, Tennessee transfer.
Yep, you mentioned on one of the last shows. He's an absolute monster as well. Other guys, Nolan Smith and Khalid Ringo, who were talking to our buddy Tom the other night, Mom.
Yep, he's a big Ringo fan.
Yeah, he was like, oh, my God, I hope the Giants draft Khalid Ringo last year. Did have that pick.
He said, get that man a 6-shooter and a cowboy hat and get old cowboy Ringo up there to the New York Football Giants.
Yep, did have the game-clinching pick 6 in the championship game, so.
One person I wanted to point out on this list, Noah, and I hope that this guy lives up to the hype because I've been seeing a crap ton of it, is Osiris Torrance. This man has been getting hyped up like crazy. I just saw yesterday he's on PFF's first team All-American for offensive guard for this year. The numbers are there, just not in the SEC. So I'm really hoping that dude can be as good as everybody's kind of making him out to be for us.
That's a huge human being. He is, man. Darnell Washington is massive. But yeah,
you need to watch that guy this year, Andrew, because he is. It's
insane, man. But yeah, Osiris Torrance is the only Florida Gator on the first team at all, really. I thought they might have a little bit more, but evidently they do not. Lots of comments coming in. Can Texas A&M finish? Question, Josh. The question I would ask after they got number 1 class: can they finish first? Because that's what they should be aiming for. I think a second is. Look, I know they didn't do it last year and they beat Alabama and whatnot, but you get a number 1 class in, Garth, with the consistent classes, top 10 classes they got under Jimbo. They got to be serious to compete.
Also, question to the viewers here, Andrew. Where's all your comments about your LSU Tigers, your alma mater? You have not said one word about them.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of those. John predicting UGA and Texas A&M to win the divisions. Tennessee will look like one of the hottest teams with possible best quarterback. I think Bryce Young is still the best quarterback in the country, but second best in the SEC, I definitely think is Hendon Hooker. That guy's a superstar. We already mentioned him, Garth, on our SEC East show. Takes care of the football. He's very accurate. He's dynamic. He's just so talented. He's a fantastic quarterback. He really is. And I take no pleasure in saying that because I actually despise the team he's on. The guy's a monster. It's kind of like how I felt when you guys had Kyle Trask. I'm like, I hate this guy, but he's a beast. UGA has been top 5 in recruiting since Kirby got there. Our depth will be fine. Our good buddy Hank Addictor coming in with a comment. What's up, buddy? How you doing, man? Garth ain't lying. Darnell is a monster. There are reasons for this. Go LSU baseball. See, now he's talking about the baseball.
Come on, Andrew. I thought
Andrew,
after seeing that video
come on,
of
man.
I thought after seeing that video with Brian Kelly, the fake Southern accent, Andrew would be like, "Oh man, I'm hyped up. This is our
Chip
guy."
Kelly. Chip
Yeah,
Kelly.
I said Chip at first.
Hey, they might have been better with Chip Kelly.
They might have been better off with Chip.
Oh my God, man. Our good buddy Tom isn't here. He loves Brian. He's like the only Notre Dame fan I know that actually likes Brian Kelly. Every other one I know can't stand the guy. And now he's at LSU grinding on players. He said he had a player
grinding on players for photo shoots. In fake Southern accents.
He said, the fake Southern accents. He said he had a player committing that ended up committing to Alabama later. I think it was, and then Eli Ricks transferred to Alabama as well. It's like, man, that's just these poor guys. Second team, like I mentioned, Hendon Hooker, Chris Rodriguez at Kentucky, running back, absolute monster. A-Chain, who had some good plays for A&M last year behind Isaiah Spiller. Andrew knows there's a fraud in Louisiana. Yep, understandable. Cedric Tillman at Tennessee, like him a lot. Cameron Latu, starting tight end for Alabama, made some decent plays last year for them as well. John, I think it was John that asked me earlier about the UJ offensive line. Well, Warren McClendon was first team All-SEC, and our center Cedric Van Pran is second. So, I mean, that's at least two guys we have, so I think we'll be fine there. On the defensive side, more Alabama guys. Surprise, surprise. Dallas Turner, I absolutely love. He's a stud. And like I said, UGA reject Brenton Cox Jr. Goes to Florida. He's the second team All-SEC. That's just how it goes. A couple other guys. Bumper Pool. I just always like the guy, especially his name. I guess it's a stud football name. But, yeah, that's the second team. And the third team, we'll just go through real quick. Will Levis, quarterback for Kentucky. Kenny McIntosh from UGA will have a much bigger role this year now that Zamir White and James Cook have gone to the NFL. You're so annoying. But Zach Evans at Ole Miss as well. A couple other guys, Aeneas Smith at Texas A&M. I think he's an absolute stud. On the defense side, your guy Gervin Dexter Sr., third team all defense, as well as Ventrell Miller and Trey Dean. So that's the All-SEC teams. There's friggin' three of them, which is absolutely insane. So, I think we've already discussed Georgia will be in the SEC championship game. But who do you have representing the West, Garth? Because I think, this is a year where A&M needs to take that step and actually compete for it. But can they get it done in year one with that number one class?
Oh, yeah, this one's easy for me, guys. Alabama. 110% Alabama. They're miles ahead of everybody. Yes, Texas A&M got the upset last year at home. Kyle Field. Place was absolutely insane. But the thing for Alabama is, they don't have a lot of question marks. This isn't a team with a bunch of holes on it. Texas A&M, you're like, who's going to play quarterback, and are they going to be good? Alabama, obviously, you've got Bryce Young, who's going to torch everybody he plays this year, most likely. Arkansas maybe challenges, at least is in the mix, but I don't think they've got enough to knock off Alabama quite yet. I just don't see how we don't have another Alabama-Georgia SEC championship game, guys. And the thing to remember is with this whole recruiting thing, yes, Jimbo did just bring in the number one class in the country, but it is a very, very rare occurrence for true freshmen to come in and start, let alone make a huge impact, especially multiple ones, because they're going to need more than just one guy to come up and play lights out as a true freshman. So, I think that Texas A&M is moving in the right direction. Jimbo's doing the right things now, but he's still playing catch up to Saban. And also, probably the most important thing to factor in, Alabama is fresh off a national championship loss. So they are looking to come out, get back to that SEC championship game, get back to the college football playoffs, and try and right their wrongs from last year.
Yeah, no, I agree completely, Garth. Sorry, I did just blank out real quick. Did you say who would actually win that SEC championship game?
Oh, that's right. I need to make my pick. I did not make an actual pick. It's tough. These teams are so evenly matched now. Kirby's got himself established there in Athens. I don't know. It's literally a coin toss, Noah. I think what my gut says in this one is I think Alabama's going to win just because they are the most recent of the two teams to lose. I'm a big person in exterior motivation, and I think that Alabama really, really wants to get some revenge and win. And we could have the same exact situation pan out, though. Alabama could go out and win the SEC championship game, and Georgia could knock them off either in the finals or in the playoffs, depending on how the seeding works out. But, yeah, that's just my gut feeling. Like I said, it's a complete toss-up to me, though, 50-50.
Couple more comments. Andrew talking about Brian Kelly. I don't think he's anything worse than what we're used to be honest. Yeah, Orgeron fell off big time there after Joe Burrow and everyone left that championship team.
Man, what a character, though, Ed Orgeron is, guys. This dude was running around campus with his shirt off. He was all about,
I love him,
Tigers.
Oh, Tigers, what about? I can't understand anything the guy says.
Now this man is in Miami, and he's holding up the U and yelling, the U is back, the U is back. But, like, what is going on with this man? He's living his best life, that's for sure, though.
Yeah, he's a passionate guy, great guy. Unfortunately, it didn't work towards him towards the end. Josh saying Alabama will have a stronger team this season than last. I agree. They still have a lot of their key players there, and they got a number 2 class in as well. Like Gar said, A&M had the best recruiting class, but won't be enough to take Alabama down this year.
Yeah, the guys that they got in this last recruiting class where you're going to see them make their impact is next year and the year after. Once they get to be sophomore and juniors.
Yeah, I agree. I will say I don't think they'll beat Alabama for the division this year, but what I've always said is it doesn't have to be you have to beat them year one. You have to genuinely compete with them. No more of this 4-loss bullcrap last year. Okay, great. You won your national championship. You beat Alabama. It means nothing if you lose 3 games towards the end of the season. You're not even – what were they, 5th in the West last year? Something embarrassing like that?
Yes.
Yeah, they should be way better than that with the classes they got already. Not even counting this year.
They were in
number 1.
They were in a shootout with Mississippi State.
Yeah, I mean,
after beating Bama.
Will Rogers was absolutely destroying their defense. So we'll see what happens. But for the actual SEC championship game, I do agree with you. I think it'll be pretty consensus, like what most people think. I think it'll be Georgia and Alabama again. And I am going to pick Alabama solely for a few reasons. Number one, I picked them last year, and they won, and we won the national championship at the end, so it worked out for me. But also, I do not believe in reverse jinxing powers, but if I did, it would make sense to pick Alabama because then Georgia would win, and then they win back-to-back titles. So hopefully our guys use that everyone thinks Alabama will beat them as motivation. We'll see what happens. But for now, we'll both go with Alabama. We've done all our conference predictions. We're over 2 hours in the show. We're going to wrap up very soon. But real quick, I do have a few more things before we get off here. Just a couple of general questions. The first one, which team do you expect to have a decline after being great last year? I'm going to start with mine, Garth. I think it's pretty easy. I'm going to go with the Michigan Wolverines. Being in the college football playoff last year, beating out Ohio State and stuff like that. I think Ohio State has gotten much stronger this year. They're not going to disappoint again. And plus, like I said, I think Michigan lost a lot. They had a dream season last year, and even then, I mean, they only, won the Big Ten by like 1 game, and then they got destroyed by UGA. So I'm going to pick Michigan as my team. Who are you going with here, Garth?
There's several good options.
You can pick more than one if you want. That's fine.
I agree with what you said with Michigan. I think they definitely take a step back. I just don't know how drastic it's going to be. One too many beers for Andrew out there in the San Diego area. Also, though, I think that Michigan State is going to take a pretty significant step back this year. I just feel like Kenneth Walker was just too valuable to that offense, and they're stuck in such a tough division where each week they're playing a team that very realistically could beat them. The other thing, too, a lot of people – we talked about it last season. I don't know how many people realize this, but a huge, huge part of Mel Tucker's success last year was veteran transfers who are now gone due to graduate or to the NFL draft. So I feel like he's going to have a year or two where maybe not terrible seasons, but definitely has some bumps and bruises along the way as he tries to get in – these high-level recruits and get them up to speed in college football. And then thirdly, I'm trying to think. I had a third one, and I got on a tangent about Michigan and Michigan State. Oh, shoot. Well, if I think about it, I'll bring it back up. But I definitely had a third team, and now I just blanked. Yes, John Suggs actually reminded me. Cincinnati, because I'm going to be curious to see the few key players that they lost from this team to the NFL draft, how it impacts them. I guess I would say that they might not be on my for sure take a step back list. I think they're on that bubble. They're on the outside looking in where potentially they could see themselves take a step back. Oh, also one that we both forgot, Noah. I think Pittsburgh, no Kenny Pickett.
Yeah.
And Wake Forest due to, unfortunately, as we covered earlier in the broadcast, no Sam Hartman.
Yeah, no, those are all very solid choices. I definitely think, Michigan State and Cincinnati take a step back, like you said, and obviously we agree on Michigan. I think it's the one most people would say. But like John says here, I think these are some good choices. Pittsburgh, you mentioned Wake Forest. I think they'll both take a step back, which is why I think Clemson can win the conference. Cincinnati, it's going to be tough to repeat going undefeated, make the playoff and all that after, like you said, Garth, they did lose a lot. Notre Dame had a very good season, finished in the top 10. We'll see what Marcus Freeman does. He has some tough games, Garth. They opened with Ohio State, I believe, which is going to be a very difficult test for them. I know our buddy Tom, he's always said that they can beat Ohio State, and he thinks they will, but I'm not so sure, man. I think Ohio State's going to be very good this year, and they're going to be on a revenge tour, if you will, after the bad season they had last year. Ole Miss, I agree with that as well. They lost Matt Corral. They lost a good bit on the team. Next question. It's the exact opposite. On the other hand, which team that disappointed last year do you think can rebound this year? Now, Garth, I'm 99.99% sure I know who you're going to say on this one, but I'll let you go first because I just want you to confirm that I'm right on that.
Well, they actually, it wasn't the first team that came to mind, but obviously the easy choice for myself would be Florida. Mm-hmm. Now, keep in mind, by me saying having a rebound year doesn't mean that they're going to go out and win the SEC East or anything. I just definitely expect to see a better season, better overall effort and discipline out of the football team. Yeah. One very interesting thing that I read about this team, Noah, just recently last year, though, 5-1 record at home, only loss coming to Alabama, obviously by 2 points. Completely different on the road. And the thing is, much like with my Chargers, pretty much my entire time being a fan of them, they had a very large number of one-score losses. So, just a lot of things. Maybe they don't win in big fashion, but you clean up a few things here and there, you potentially win a lot of those games. So, them, I think we could see Stanford have a rebound year. They had a really bad last year. USC as well. When you look at their overall record and conference record, those are two teams that come to mind. Trying to think if there's any others out there that kind of really jump out. UNC, I think we both talked about when we covered the ACC. They definitely could have a rebound year season this year. Like you said, Nebraska, if the offense comes to play. Or Wisconsin, rather. I meant Wisconsin. I get those two mixed up because their colors are too damn similar. If Wisconsin can generate some offense, they should have a really solid season.
Good choices. There's definitely a few teams I could think of, like you said. And Josh just took the words out of my mouth. I was just about to say Clemson because I did pick them.
Good choice there.
Did pick them to win the conference. You mentioned North Carolina. Like I said, I think I did have those teams meet in the championship game. So
how about here's $1 million question: is FSU on your potential rebound team list?
God no, man, they suck. They're so bad. Like, hey, they did get a good recruiting class. I give them credit for that. They did better. But I'm just not a fan of Mike Norvell, as you call him. The emphasis on the two L's, man. I don't know.
The worst part with me, all bias aside against FSU, they didn't even say to this man, like, hey, you need to go out and prove that you can win. They're like, nope, 3 straight losing seasons, 5-year extension. Sign us up. We love it.
LSU will compete for the division. I don't think they will win, but they will end up number 2 or number 3.
You heard it here first on the Sweet Tea Show. Andrew going with the LSU Tigers, with the fraudster leading the way to win the SEC West.
Yep. But who else was I saying? Oh, yeah, I guess Ohio State, because they lost 2 games last year. That's considered a down year for them. Who else? Pac-12-wise, USC. I think they'll be much better this year as well. Big 12, Oklahoma, I picked them to win the conference, so I guess that counts a little bit. And then SEC-wise, unfortunately, I would probably say Florida. I mean, they were just so terrible last year. A 6 in the East, like, you have to rebound from that. You have to finish, like, 4th at least, I think. Or at least, 3rd, 4th, something like that. And if you finish 5th, I'd be disappointed with it. But we mentioned a few weeks ago, the race between, like, 2nd and 5th, very close. But they got to be better than freaking there's only one team finished below you in the East, and it's Vanderbilt. Like, that's embarrassing. For a team of Florida's quality and status, I think they'll bounce back because they have to. They get the recruits. They have the resources. You told me God knows how many times about what, Naper's doing with recruiting and the facilities and with the coaching staff, blah, 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 stuff like that. So I definitely think they'll rebound. Other teams, UCF might be a good choice as well. You mentioned them earlier as one of your potential picks for winning the American. So there's a lot of good choices. Andrew's saying as well, USC, Stanford, and Washington are on my radar. Maybe even Arizona State to take the steps forward. So, yeah, I mean,
guy at the helm, Emory Jones.
Yes, Emory Jones.
Yeah. I think it could be. Me and Noah talked a little bit about this. I think it could be a good change of scenery for him because the expectations will be a lot less. The pressure will be a lot less there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Washington could definitely rebound as well. I think, like Andrew says, Arizona State's a good choice. And Stanford, I mean, I know they were terrible last year and they've been on the down slope for a few years, but David Shaw is still there, and I've always thought he was a very good head coach. So we'll see what happens. John's saying Tennessee will take a step forward. They did win 7 games last year. I could definitely see him winning more than that this year. A lot of really good choices. So, we'll see if any of those teams do improve this year and rebound a bit. Now, final general question. Some matchups in particular you were looking forward to watching this season. Doesn't have to be your team. You can choose as many as you want. I'm probably going to choose like maybe 3 or so. But just any games you saw when the schedule came out and just like, man, that's a game I'm really looking forward to.
Oh, definitely. Friggin' Alabama, Texas A&M. After that trash talking in the media between Jimbo and Saban. Notre Dame, Ohio State, for sure. A game we just talked about a few minutes ago. USC, Utah, because we get to see how much of an immediate impact the quarterback and new head coach will bring to probably the best defense in that conference, at least as of right now. Michigan, Ohio State. Is Ohio State just going to come out and absolutely boat race those guys, get revenge for last season, or is Michigan going to find a way to make that game at least be difficult for Ohio State to win? And then one pick that's kind of just my own bias pick, Utah, Florida, just because I'll physically be there in person, and I'm really, really excited to get there and watch that game.
Yeah, there's some great matchups this year, Garth. I'm just going to say something.
Oregon, Georgia as well. Honestly, I think that it'll be close in the first half, but Georgia will get pounce on them in the second and kind of make things, look more lopsided in the final score. But I am interested, one, to see what this Oregon team is going to look like this year. They get a really good test right out the gates against your Bulldogs, and just see what kind of a little bit of what does Dan Lanning bring to the table as a head coach.
Yeah, no, Garth. I did write down a few that I wanted to mention. You mentioned 2 of them I was going to say, which is Utah and Florida, and Oregon versus Georgia. I think just 2 really solid out-of-conference matchups. A couple others that pop out to me. Notre Dame at USC. Lincoln Riley versus the upcoming Marcus Freeman. I think that's going to be an interesting game. Cincinnati at Arkansas is another good one. Clemson at Notre Dame, and then obviously they play Ohio State as well. So Notre Dame with some big time games I want to try and watch this year. A couple others I already mentioned: Utah, Florida, Oregon versus Georgia, blah blah blah, and a really big one as well, Garth. I don't know if you mentioned this one. Alabama at Texas. This is big for a few reasons. Obviously, Alabama, great team, and Texas is trying to get back there. They're getting great recruits. But a potential SEC, showdown. Well, it's not even potential; it's confirmed. But it's a bit of a preview, if you will, is what I mean to say, of what Texas could potentially do in a few years when they're in the SEC. So, really excited to watch that game as well. Andrew saying San Diego State versus Florida and at Utah. Those are biased, though.
One game I forgot to mention, Noah. This one's got the potential to be a blockbuster. NC State at Clemson, October 1st, which I believe will be week 5.
That could
technically week 6, but their 5th game of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that definitely could be a conference deciding type game as well there, Garth. John saying Oregon versus UGA. Obviously, he's a Ducks fan, so maybe a little biased, but I do think it'd be a good game, and plus I'm biased as well. Cincinnati at Arkansas. North Carolina. Yeah, I think that was one I said. North Carolina at App State and Bama at Texas. Who would win in a fist fight between Adam Miller and Lewis? The referee.
Yeah,
I agree, Andrew. I agree because he's getting paid to do basically nothing because those guys would just somehow knock themselves out with no one else do. Neither one doing anything. They'd find a way to both knock themselves out, no doubt in my mind. Now, main topic of the show. Now, we're not going to do any, who do we think is going to win the national championship? Those are postseason. This is just regular season predictions. We're going to go, who do we think makes the college football playoff? Garth, I will start with you. I think we each name one team. We go back and forth. So, you name your first team, that I name my first team, etc., until we have all 4. So, the floor is yours on this one. Who do you have as your...
Now, are we going in actual order of, who do we think gets the number 1 overall seed, or just naming in general? Regardless of what seed they get.
I'd probably go in order. So, start with who you think would be number 4.
Number 4. Ooh, that's a tough one. So I think whoever ends up with the 4 seed is going to be not in the SEC or in the Big Ten, is kind of my opinion on that, because I think we're going to see 2 SEC teams get in again. Whoever wins the SEC championship game will get the 1 seed. Whoever loses will possibly get the 4 seed, but my gut feeling is they'll get the 3rd. So for me, off the top of my head, 4th seed is going to go to a team like maybe a ACC conference champion, maybe like Clemson. I could see at 4.
All right. So Garth is going with Clemson at number 4. And, I got to be honest with you, Garth. You completely stole my pick because I also went Clemson at number 4. I think that, like I said, I think they'll rebound, win their conference this year. Could very well go undefeated. The thing that goes against them is, obviously strength of schedule is always a problem with them in the ACC. But at the same time, I'd make the argument, well, they played in the same conference for years, but they're one of the only teams that's beaten Alabama twice on the big stage. So they may get in ranked at number 4, but I personally, if they do have the type of season I think they can do, if Dabo returns to potential like I know he can with that team, they'll be one of my biggest contenders for the title, no doubt. Now that brings us to number 3, Garth.
Yeah, so number 3 is really, in my opinion, down to who do you have winning and losing the SEC championship game. I'm going to stick to the pick that I made before, that Alabama is going to win the SEC championship game. So this is where I would have Georgia at, is number 3.
All right. Garth going with Georgia at number 3. This is tough, man. I definitely know the 3 teams that I have making out.
By the way, I do want to backtrack a little bit and say that if NC State were to win the ACC, then it would be them at 4. But I'm sticking with my Clemson pick. Just adding a little bit to that. That's going to be whoever comes out of that ACC for sure.
Gotcha. That is not what I meant to do. Holy shit. All right. Okay. Well, this is getting a little bit boring, Garth, because, I'm here with you again. I did pick Alabama to win the championship game, or the SEC championship. Doesn't mean they won the thing overall, but, if they do win the SEC championship, I think is a really high potential. If they do go undefeated, maybe if they slip up somewhere and they lose a game, maybe it'll be a bit different. But, if Georgia does lose the championship game, but other than that, if they win basically every game, I think they could sneak in the playoffs again, at like a number 3 or whatever, and it'll be fine. Now, number 2, I think, is where it's most interesting, Garth. Who do you have coming in at number 2?
Actually, for me, this was probably my easiest pick. I've got Ohio State here because 1 and 2 is going to be between Alabama and Ohio State. And who is the committee going to side with? The team in the SEC, because of the strength of schedule is harder. And also just obviously Nick Saban gets a little bit of bias because of just how damn good he's been his whole career there. So this is where I slate in Ohio State and obviously Alabama at number 1.
Well, I do just want to let everyone know this was not planned. Garth and I do not confer on our picks at all. We come up with them off screen and then we reveal them to the other on air. So when I put up this graphic, it's literally exactly the same except it has my name on it. That's just, we just completely agree. We did not confer on this at all. We're exactly the same. We think exactly the same, which is kind of interesting, Garth, because we differed on a lot of the conference championships and things. When it comes to the playoff teams, we were actually exactly the same, which wasn't the case last year. We did have some differentiation last year. But,
also, I think, Noah, that if Clemson gets good quarterback play this year, this is going to be a hell of a college football playoff should this work out the way that we've predicted anyways.
Well, that's the thing, Guard. DJ has the talent. We saw him play Notre Dame when he came in for Trevor Lawrence. He destroyed them, and Notre Dame was very good that year. And he just absolutely demolished them. Like, he has the talent. He was just terrible last year. I don't know if it was confidence. He had the full-time job, maybe something, He's not sure if he's ready or whatnot, something mentally or whatnot. He didn't look like the same guy at all. So, I definitely agree. If he could go back to playing like we know he can at his best, that would make things a lot more interesting. But yeah, Clemson number 4 from the ACC. I think 2 SEC teams, like you said, and I would expect it to be Alabama and Georgia. Maybe not in that order. Maybe Alabama loses the championship game. Who knows? But I think, unless they slip up along the way and lose a game, they shouldn't. If one team is undefeated and one team has one loss to the other, I think it's pretty consensus both would get in. And Ohio State, like I said, I think they rebound when their conference. I think a few other teams that in that conference, will decline. They just have so much talent. Now, that said, I could also see them being a team that completely underachieves again with all the talent they have and somehow miss the playoffs entirely. I just don't see it on paper, though. I think, C.J. Stroud, in my opinion, is the second best quarterback in all of college football. The only guy I think is a little better is on Alabama. Bryce Young, I think, is just a little bit better. But I think they're like neck and neck. I think it's those two, and then everybody else is way down.
Agreed.
Yep, yeah, they're just incredible. And they have such good offensive weapons. Defense is still pretty good. They got to make the playoff this year. They really do. And this is a big year for Ryan Day, I'd say, as well. If he underachieves this year or whatever, if they somehow miss the playoffs, like I said, Gar, you're starting to get to the point where Urban's players aren't really there anymore. These are all Ryan Day's players now. So if they start losing and they decline under him, that's an indictment against him, and it could end up, unfortunately, I have to say it, he could end up losing his job if they don't do something very good this year. So we'll see what happens for them this year. But, yeah, Garth and I both going with Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, and Alabama as our playoff teams in that order from 4 to 1. So we'll see. We'll probably be completely wrong because this is the thing we love, Garth. It's college football, completely unpredictable, upsets every single week. I do want to mention as well, Garth, on that last question about matchups we're looking forward to, we didn't even mention Georgia, Florida.
Yeah,
that's pretty crazy. Too. But, yeah, real quick before we do get off here, we're probably not going to do a show next week. I move back into college next Friday, so I'm probably not going to be available for it. But Friday, August 26th, like I said, 2 weeks from tomorrow is the start of Week 0 games. Garth did win the picks last year under very fluky circumstances, I will say. But we'll be back with our predictions in Week 0, the day before, which is Friday, August 26th. So we'll see what happens. We have made a couple of picks. I'm going to save all these, and we'll add them to the total at the end of the year. But our weekly picks will be coming back very soon. Real quick, last thing before we do get off your Garth, it's been another mammoth of the show. Do just want to give a quick shout-out to our Sean's of the week. You did have an absolute banger earlier with that guy saying that Colorado and Massachusetts bordered each other. But that's just.
Also, Isaac Newton went to the moon before rockets were invented somehow.
Yep, Sir Isaac Newton went to the moon, and Neil Armstrong discovered gravity. That's just how it goes, man. Yeah, you know what? You don't even need to say another one. That just takes the cake. What an idiot, man. Where does your dealership find these guys? First it was Sean, then it's Sean 2.0. You have the EPOB guy, you had Bing Bong, you had Mickey Mouse. Like, what the hell, man? Honestly.
I miss Mickey Mouse. It was funny as hell that he sounded and talked like Mickey Mouse, but he was actually a damn good worker and like literally the only guy who did his job really well in the warehouse since I stopped doing that and moved up to the parts counter.
Poor Mickey Mouse. John saying Bama, Ohio State, NC State, and Oregon. Andrew saying Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon / Utah and Georgia. So a couple guys giving the Pac-12 some love here. UTSA versus Texas will be a showdown. Also, that'd be an interesting game. But yeah, man, Sean of the week. Who am I going to go with here? There's some big candidates, man. Oh, jeez. You know, I'm probably going to go with that Patrick guy I saw in Sport Life this week that was talking shit about the Braves. And then Mikey went at him, and he left the group like a little bitch completely. So, yeah, come on, man. If you're going to talk shit, that's fine. But be able to back it up. Don't just run with your tail between your legs because Mikey Bradley just beat you up in your conversation. And I got to say as well, man, getting beaten up by Mikey Bradley in a sports debate, that's a low bar, man. That's like losing a freaking 100-meter dash to a guy that can't even walk. Like, that's just embarrassing, dude. Come on, man. Be better. Hey, I love the Pac-12 too, man. They're exciting. They have some very exciting teams. I'm going to hate to see USC leave.
Mickey Bradley.
Mickey Bradley. We love him, man, but he's a mess. Wild Guard. Another amazing show. Maybe the best we've ever done. Definitely the one that took me the longest to set up. It did take me like 4 hours to set all this crap up. But, you know, every team's going for this, so we'll see what happens this season. Good old college football trophy. Do you want to just point out before we get off, though, the team that did win that last year, the defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs, will not let it go quietly. So
I wish I could say it was Georgia Tech.
Oh my God.
Unfortunately, it was that other team there in Georgia called the Bulldogs.
Yep. Yeah, it was.
Not the Yellow Jackets.
Dude, by the time they somehow win a title, I'm going to be like in a wheelchair, like 80 years old, if it ever happens. I might die before it happens, honestly. Oh my God. All right, so real quick, one more comment. Oh, God, no on his 988 times he's mentioned national champ. Hey, man, you know how it is, John. And, hey, if Oregon ever did the same for you, I know you do exactly the same. And you earned that right because winning the title like that was special, man. I have to deal with it when my team chokes friggin' 25-point lead in the Super Bowl, 10-run loss in an elimination game for the Braves a few years back versus the Cardinals, choked against Alabama in 2017. If I have to hear about that all the time, you guys can freaking hear about my national champion.
The Falcons is probably the worst because that meme is still thrown at you 24/7.
Andrew, never in a million years. I would rather freaking go to Ohio State or something like that. I would rather go to Florida.
I was literally about to say Noah would probably go to Florida before Tech.
I would, man. Holy crap. No, sir. Oh, my God. What a show, man. I just want to give a shout out. The comments, once again, absolutely fantastic. John and Andrew absolutely killing the comments. John is one of our biggest fans. He always shows up every week. Big shout out to him. Big shout out to Josh, who came in earlier. David Dunphy as well. Mikey Bradley was in here for a little bit as well.
Before he passed out.
Yeah, he passed out. He said we were ignoring his comments or whatever. I think he was drunk and he passed out. Oh, my God. Well, Garth, do you have anything last minute to add before we ended this show here?
No, just a huge shout out. Thank you, all of you guys, for tuned in tonight. Absolutely blew up the comments. Me and Noah love that we get a ton of love when we talk college football on here. Obviously, it's become kind of our expertise, our focal point of the show, if you will. So to get the support and appreciation from you guys, it means the world to us, because if we just sat on here and talked for, almost 3 hours now with literally no comments, I think we both would lose our minds. But you guys help keep us on task. You also help us go on wild tangents and chuckle and laugh amongst ourselves. So, we love you guys. You guys make the show way more enjoyable than it would be if you weren't here.
Absolutely, 100%. For myself, Noah Dog Dabler, and my co-host and good buddy, Guard Treasure Patrick, This has been another episode of the Sweet Tea Show on the Sports Box. We'll be back August 26th for our first weekly prediction show. We'll be discussing the Week 0 games. Pretty decent matchups as well for Week 0, so we're excited to look forward to that. Until then, thank you very much for the support, comments, the likes, all of that. Really enjoyed doing it. You guys make it a lot better. It was a fantastic show. Until then, enjoy your sports, and just, have a good life, basically. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching this episode of Sweet Tea on the Sports Box. Please remember to follow us on all of our social media outlets. On Facebook at Sportsbox Show, Twitter at Sportsbox Show, Instagram at The Sportsbox Show. Find us on YouTube and join Outside the Box, our Facebook sports discussion group. The Sports Box is brought to you by our sponsor, Showcase Sports in Hamilton. Showcase Sports for the elite athlete. And also our friends over at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use promo code THEBOX at sign up for 10 free points. Thank you for joining us.